Hello, hello, everyone. This is your Right Geek, honorary Man King, and leader of the Awkward Cop Squad, here with number one Marmaduke fan and Punchy Sonatu to continue our that started last week. How are you today, everyone?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
Yes,
You're
I'm
welcome.
I'm still alive. So hello.
Hello, hello, hello. So there was we covered a fair amount of ground in the last stream. Let's see. So do you want us to summarize that for you, Marm, before we push forward?
Sure, that would help.
Okay, so we kind of bounced around based on where our inspiration took us. I did open the stream by clearing my throat for several minutes and talking about uh, basically how I considered Civil War to be a horrendously bad idea. Uh, and my theories about it don't change that. um, I then we did talk about the initial the priors that I assigned in the homework reading, which were the extremist storyline and the execute program storyline in the Iron Man comic books. We did cover that because I wanted to point out that there is textual evidence that there is textual evidence that that extremis actually altered Tony's personality in a significant
Hmm.
way. So I wanted to point that out because that basically served as my rationalization for what went on there as far as Tony was concerned when I read it the first time, and I was trying to make it make sense in my head, even though that was probably a foolish endeavor. So we talked about that, and then we just kind of veered into the Civil War event itself. And Punchy had some very interesting things to say about the Punisher's role in this story, and how his ethical code, in some sense, saved the Caps faction in that by preventing them from essentially compromising their morals.
Well,
So
well,
those are some of the things that we talked about last. Yeah,
saved
go
and
ahead.
destroyed. Saved and destroyed at the same time. I think in some ways he was responsible for the end of Cap's faction. At least, he was kind of a proximate cause of the end. But yeah, I had some hot takes about the Punisher. I'm not sure if Marmaduke would agree. If you'd want to go through any of that. But yeah, we mostly did Extremis. The part one was the build up
Yeah.
to Civil War, I guess. They're discussing
Yeah.
Tony and Iron Man and how Iron Man is in fact not a villain.
Which is
Not a
interesting because
villain.
he does stuff like make clones of mythological gods and imprison American citizens in alternate
Yeah.
dimensions. Yeah,
Well, I mean that was mostly Reed. The clone was mostly Reed. I had several bones to pick with with Reed and the Fantastic Four characters. But yeah, I mean we can get into that. I would you want to discuss what your thoughts on Iron Man were, or should we what what should we do? Because part one was basically just Iron Man is not the villain; he is the Shakespearean antagonist, and various ways in which Iron
yeah.
Man could have done things differently, or why he didn't do things differently. Drug abuse, I think, was a major theme too. Right, geek. The drug
Well,
angle.
so I made the argument, just as I said a few minutes ago, that the extremis enhancile impacted his personality and made him more paranoid and aggressive. Textually, it's in the text. So I sort of cited that as he was jacked up on this new essentially technovirus that made him 1,000% more powerful, and that corrupted him to a certain extent. That I think can partially explain a lot of his decisions in the Civil War event. Not that like I did say too that there were some aspects of his argument that were in fact rational if you look at it from certain perspectives. But I think that that Extremis also enhanced his lack of trust in the others, and caused him to withhold things that he should not have withheld from the others, and that is in some sense the source of his problems. And also, it also caused him to be even more convinced of his own ability to control the situation, because he's walking into this with the idea that if I don't become the standard bearer for this side of the argument, then someone else will, and they'll do an even more piss poor job of it. And,
playing the pragmatist.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Extremis played a role in that too, because in the Extremis and Execute program stories, we see him actually believing that he develops this belief that I am so powerful now that I can essentially end all war, right? So he develops this this is like actual genuine God complex, not what Christopher Cantwell thinks is a God complex, right? And so and so because of this developing God complex that was driven by this Extremis enhancile, he believed that if he were in charge of this superhero registration, that he could prevent all of the worst effects of this idea, right? And it turns out no, right, that his arrogance exceeded what he was actually able to do in terms of controlling the situation. So that's where we're getting like Shakespearean antagonists from. It's I think his motives were not bad motives, but he was misled by his own Extremis enhanced arrogance into believing that he could control a situation that he really couldn't control.
Yeah, so his tragic flaw is his confidence.
Yeah,
right.
His confidence combined with the lack of confidence in certain areas leads to his downfall.
Which is one of the things that Captain America brings up in like the second or third time they meet to try to argue things out, that Tony has a control freak aspect to him. I think at one point even Captain America says it's a trait I see in alcoholics, where yeah, right, is that Tony's alcohol problem is essentially a lack of control over himself. Tony's genius leads him to believe that he can like make a decision for everybody else, and then he has kind of like the willpower to commit to that decision, right? So in this case, I basically agree with Punchy. What's funny is when I read it, as like a teenager, I just sort of saw Tony as the bad guy, right? And one of the things I picked up is that a lot of the side books for Civil War are much better than the main Civil War book, because in the main Civil War book, you basically like two scenes of Tony looking at like the funeral and feeling sad, and that's all you get for him, really. And then in his own book, you get a lot more of the background with Extremis and how it's kind of like making him almost have an inhuman perspective on things. You see how it feeds into his own alcoholism, and basically how he really does sincerely believe that what he's doing is what he needs to do for the sake of saving lives, and for like having superheroing continue at all. And some of the What If books got into this as well, where they showed alternatives where, if Tony could have been a little bit more humble, he might have been able to work things out with Captain America. If Tony had died, the other interesting thing is if Tony had died, their idea is that Captain America would have led the resistance unopposed by Tony, but the government would have cracked down a lot harder on them. So it's sort of like if Marvel's trying to say something, they're trying to say that Tony's pragmatic perspective actually has value. There's value to pragmatism, but Tony's arrogance led to him basically being responsible for the death of Cap. And there's that great scene in The Death of Captain America where Cap asks him, "Is it worth it?" And after Cap's death, Tony finally has to admit that it wasn't worth it in the end. So I liked Civil War more coming back to it as an adult than when I did as a kid. I basically agree with you though that the whole thing was kind of what is it, a little misconceived, right? But there are aspects of it that I like better now looking back on it.
Well, one
Yeah.
thing, because you just mentioned that there might have been an undertone of positive, like a positive message about Iron Man's pragmatism, right? And one thing that we kind of got into at the end, which we didn't really have enough time to explore, was the question of whether or not Marvel was actually trying to make the case for regulation.
Yeah.
Most people tend to assume that the anti-reg was supposed to be the good guys and reg was supposed to be the bad guys. But I know some people have floated the idea that actually the authors and Marvel itself may have intended reg to be the good guys, and they're doing one of these, sort of kung fu, like, oh, isn't this terrible, lizard kind of move. So I don't know if you have any opinions on that, or if we want to get back into that one later on. But that was something we had.
I picked up some of that. There's even some like imagery of like Iron Man standing in front of the American flag. In some of the Iron Man Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. arcs, it has Iron Man going back to saving the world and stopping supervillains with Cap dead, right? Right. It's hard for me to put a pin on Marvel. I feel like Marvel, especially in like kind of like from the 60s to the 2000s, it was sort of like Marvel was absolutely committed to being as centrist and normie as possible, right? So it almost, my personal feeling is they were trying to do a Watchmen thing, and so it's like it's the deconstruction of the Marvel heroes in that we're having them have like a legitimate, serious war, right? But yeah, I definitely got the vibe this time that Iron Man's viewpoint is being treated as the more serious viewpoint for the new century. Cap's the old-fashioned guy who just can't accept change.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because Warzord made that comment about Tony not being as bad as Ozymandias in relation to the God complex, and I was going to say, well, that's because Watchmen was better written, but I guess we're coming back to that already. Again, disclaimer. No, none of us are trying to argue that Civil War was a particularly competent book. We're just examining it as what it is.
Yeah.
I think like my argument, and I think I kind of implied it last time, and Marm kind of stated it now, that the supplementary books were better than the main book. Sometimes 1,000 times better. I did mention last time that the book Casualties of War, which was which again was Iron Man and Captain America meeting one last time, essentially. And trying to hash it out, right? That one, in my view, although of course I'm sure people have other opinions, in my view, that is the best book that was done in that period, because at least for me, it generated a very strong emotional response when I read it the first time. So, so I'm definitely in full agreement with Marm that a lot of the side stories that other writers were writing to try to grapple with this event that was going on were better than the actual main event. And kind of, I think I said last time that the Knopfs and Christos Gage and some of those writers were made a very valiant effort to redeem it and partially succeeded.
It's interesting how it's kind of like events in general. Like my idea of a fun event is just like some big bad guy attack.
Yeah.
Civil War is sort of the comic I think of when I think that superheroes at their best are supposed to be closer to Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse than to like the historic Thor or to Greek tragedy, right? So shoot, I lost my train of thought there. So I'll just keep carrying on with it, right? But tonally, the main event itself feels like just a big sprawling fight between all the heroes. But some of the individual little stories, it's more like, what did Captain America mean to Spider-Man? So it's a nice little character development story for Spidey. I feel like Marvel does its best when it's at that kind of like down-to-earth, human identifiable aspect. And the pretentious part of Civil War was trying to say something about the issue of freedom versus security. But I don't, just the fact that we've been going back and forth about it, what even were they trying to say about freedom versus, were they trying to say anything about freedom versus security? Did they just want to cash in on it the whole time?
I mean, it may have just been a cash in. Like I made the point, last time. I know, we tend to be pretty boomery. We're old people, but some of our viewers may be Zoomers and may not remember, 2005, 2006. But back then, the whole idea of freedom versus security and should the state be large, and anti-terrorism and Afghanistan and Iraq and all these things, that was very popular, and that was a very woke subject. So I mean, it could have just been an attempt to cash in on the zeitgeist, where you were expected to rail against the George Bush and Dick Cheney and the Patriot Act and things. I mean, I do like just going through it and reading it on its own merits, right? Like, not trying to read my own interpretations and my own perspective into it, but just taking the text as the text, nothing else. I actually think the reg came off better than the anti-reg. I think they had more coherent arguments. I think they looked better. Every once in a while, anti-reg would make a point against the regulation superheroes, but it was usually something like, well, we've done this. This is tradition. We've done this for years. How can you be against tradition? And then the pro-reg superhero would make some great argument about how well, we got to do it like this because it's the current year, kind of thing. And so I think I would like to think that it was just a cash in, right? Because I hate thinking that Marvel, even back then, was trying to promote this idea of regulation as being a good thing. But I do think that the writers, at least, made regulation seem a lot better than it was. Until, of course, you get to the supplemental materials. Then I think it kind of fills out the storyline and helps you to see the perspective of all these different characters. But as far as like the main books go, I think it was just an excuse to have superheroes punch each other in the face, really. That's about all you can read into it.
And last time I did mention that I have heard, this is hearsay, I'm not sure because I haven't gone and looked myself, but apparently some of the people that were involved with that have actually said that they weren't sure who was going to be pro-reg and who was going to be anti-reg. Like, that was one of those last minute decisions. Which kind of suggests that their initial intent was to have superheroes punching each other in the face and to cash in on that, and not so much to actually seriously consider what each character would think about the idea of registering and regulating superheroes, right? There wasn't really a whole lot of I don't think there was a whole lot of reflection on what the characters would actually think about it. Because I mentioned last time, vis-a-vis Iron Man, a lot of what was used most often to justify Tony being pro-reg was the Armor Wars. But I pointed out last time that in the Armor Wars storyline, Tony was going against the government to pursue his own.
Which he even mentioned.
So
he mentioned that in his back and forth with Cap. That Cap was ironically
Yeah.
on the law's side. But then Cap said, well, the only reason I was fighting you then is because you had this tendency to put yourself and your ideas ahead of
Right.
others' safety, right?
Yeah, because that was Christos Gage realizing that, wait a second, I gotta, I gotta actually address that because it doesn't make sense, right? Because Christos
Right.
Gage is a good writer. Yeah. So so he was going against the government in order to prevent his technology from being used for potentially nefarious purposes, right? And so since he was acting against the government, according to his own interest in that storyline, how do we get him to the point where he would be pro-reg? And that's why I was saying last time, that's why the NOS had to write execute program to basically justify the change of mind, essentially. And they were writing that as Civil War was going on. So I'm sure a lot of people, like the people who were reading this as it was happening, were probably very confused as far as Iron Man's behavior until that whole story unspooled, right? So.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say. Also, they did a pretty good job of referencing the extremists and like the whole situation with Yenseng's son mind controlling Tony in the event.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like
Yeah.
I feel like there was maybe like if the whole event was done as an excuse to have superheroes punching each other in a giant civil war, there at least was some thought to kind of like acknowledge some of the history of these characters and their back and forth throughout the years. One of the things that made me sad about the What If is how close this could have been to just being like it's just like a big fight between the superheroes, and then have everything kind of restored to a sort of upbeat normalcy. That's one of the things that kind of like Tony Stark got tortured with, was that he was very close to just having things go back to normal with Captain America. Yeah. So I don't know, because after Civil War, it's sort of like, well, I guess Captain America and Iron Man are never going to be friends again. And, we all know that the death of Captain America is going to be undone sooner or later. So even though there's some really neat issues of characters grappling with that death, it's temporary. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that was something else we got into too. The sort of meta Marvel stuff. How this is not just this big fight between Captain America and Tony, and the end of Captain America as we know him, but it's literally the end of Marvel as we know it, right? It's kind of the beginning of the end, not just of their world, but of the entire company that was structuring them, and the philosophy behind the comics. So I've never been a huge Marvel fanboy. I do like Marvel, but I don't think I remember when it came out. I wasn't particularly mourning the death of classic Marvel, but I do think in many ways it is the end of that sort of centrist, happy, almost goofy, Looney Tunes kind of Marvel world.
I said last week that that at the end of the Civil War event, Captain America got shot in the head, and some people on YouTube have said, and he never came back. Like, and then I said, and let me add that at the end of that period, once Norman Osborn takes over S.H.I.E.L.D. and Tony erases his own brain, once he erases his own brain, Tony never came back. Like, there has been no good Tony stories since then, in my opinion. So, so really, we did say last time that the Civil War was the beginning of the end for Marvel as a company in terms of being able to put out product that was put out stories that were good stories, right? Civil War basically broke the whole Marvel universe.
Right.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem was that I believe I also said this last time, that it was actually financially successful, and the books still sell to this day. And from that, they learned the wrong lesson. They learned that what people want is just more superheroes fighting each other, and more I said yesterday, one of the things that really frustrates me about how the modern day writers handle Tony, for example, is they always have to give him like this ethical dilemma where it's the crap possibility and the even more crap possibility. Choose, right? And oh, by the way, when you choose, you're going to be put at odds with basically everyone else you've ever been friends with. They keep going back to that, like, and it's like, stop, just give them something morally easy to do. Like, it was fine once, but when you lean on that too much, it's like, really stop. They'll pick a different story, you know.
Well,
I guess it kind of like raises the question: is there any fixing? Like I always run into this problem. When do I have to like stop caring about what they do to my heroes? Right? Like, if it's skin suited, can I just like go read the old books and not worry about, you know? Oh, Tony Stark murdered 16 more people this week. I don't care. That's not Tony Stark.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the position I'm in too. Yeah. Especially since I have such strong feelings about some of these characters. Tony, obviously most of all, but Captain America too. You know, I have strong feelings about. I have strong feelings about their relationship together, right? And yeah, I don't want to stop caring because it does have such an impact on me, the older stories. But yeah, when do you stop caring?
Well, one thing I'm wondering, I guess we're all just kind of assuming Marmaduke's position here, but I would like to get some confirmation because maybe he doesn't see eye to eye on this. But is Marmaduke pro-reg or anti-reg, and why?
Okay, all right. Well, I'm very anti-reg, right? So.
Oh God, disavow! Disavow!
Yeah. Well. What is it? Gadsden flag. Yankee Doodle meme starts playing. It sort of feels like they just made. Okay. Civil War is one giant sitcom episode, or those girly romantic comedies where the guy says something to the girl and he means "I love you," but it didn't come out that way. And if only they would have a 30-minute conversation, they could fix the problem. So. Captain America is morally correct, but because he's not acting in character, that makes him like glower around and get mad at everybody who isn't fighting properly, and it stops him from having a 30-minute conversation to say, you know, maybe we should train teenagers who can with blow-up powers how to control their blow-up powers, and we don't have to hand over our constitutional rights. Both things can be true at the same time. We can teach the teenagers not to blow up and kill thousands of people, and we cannot have the government have a database of all our info. There are even like moments in the comics. Yeah, Tony. I tweeted a meme of this, but Tony says, "Oh, well, I've got people on the left and the right on my butt." And the leftists all want me to support gun control because Marvel's obviously making the connection that the Superhero Registration Act sounds almost exactly like a form of gun control. And he's got right-wingers telling him to support the Patriot Act. Like, this is just so early 2000s. It hurts. All of...
Yeah.
And they do, at the very end of Execute Program, they make the gun control parallel explicit. So, yeah.
So basically,
I was just saying exactly, because actually the pro-reg side has some very strong arguments in its defense. So here we go. Here's the pro-reg arguments that I thought were the strongest. Number one, the general public wanted it. I think that it is in fact the case that the superheroes can't say, screw the normies, we're going to do whatever we want. If the normies are concerned about how you are behaving, right, then that's something that you need to listen to as a superhero, right? The other strong thing, yes, train the teenagers with blow up powers not to blow up hundreds of people, right? or just in general, train young heroes how to minimize collateral damage and things like that. Just in general, those are all things that are valid, right? So they did have arguments on their side that I think were rational and correct. And as Marm says, I think that the real Captain America, who was in character, would actually recognize that, oh yeah, we should actually care what the normies think about our activities, right?
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing that bothers me is that, you know, Captain America, Steve knows Tony. You know, they've known each other for, in Marvel time, about 10 years, right? And I talked a lot last week about the closeness of their relationship as established in earlier canon. The fact that in prior stories in early canon, they would have ideological disputes, with Tony falling on the more pragmatic end and Steve falling more on the deontological end, right? You do it because it's right, not because it's practical, right? So they would have these disputes, but they were always able to like talk it out and work it out and recognize the strengths and the weaknesses of each other's positions, right?
The classic Marvel misunderstanding. Like they even joked about how they would try to kill each other, and then like Steve would say something like, "Oh, it all washes out, buddy. Right? No, are we good?" This goes beyond misunderstanding to actual war, where people get killed, and we're supposed to take the consequences seriously, and then you never go back to the old normalcy. If it was kind of like that more goofy, old school Marvel style and tone, this event would essentially have been like wrapped up in a few issues. The two guys would have beaten each other up for maybe an issue or two, and then they would have had one of their, "Oh, come on, pal, can't we work this?" That's one of the weird things about the What Ifs, is the What If story is actually much more tonally like the old school, kind of like Avengers style, where Tony and Cap would butt heads with one another. Yeah. So we just we didn't get something that I can neither. It's neither a old school goofy Marvel story, nor is it something that I can take seriously as a comment on the social issues it's trying to address.
Right. Well, and I further added last time that, you know, as far as Steve and Tony's relationship is concerned, in prior canon, their relationship was close enough that when, you know, Tony was in trouble, oftentimes he would go to Steve for help. Like in the Demon in a Bottle storyline, when Tony can't use his armor because it's being controlled by Justin Hammer, right? He goes to Captain America and says, I need to learn how to fight because Iron Man's not available, right? And that's in the Casualties of War, that last sequence where they're overlaying them fighting in the present day with that past sequence of them sparring and learning how to fight. That's from this storyline that I'm talking about. And so, you know, Tony is someone that they're close enough as friends that they're out helping each other out when they're in trouble, right? And I mentioned last time too that when Stark Industries is in trouble, or when Stark International is in trouble because Tony's off on an alcoholic bender and is no longer taking care of things, right? They actually asked Steve to go and find him, apparently because they assumed that Steve would be someone who would be able to knock some sense into Tony, right? So they have this relationship in early canon that's established as very close. They're basically bros. They're bros in arms, essentially. But then we get to Civil War, and suddenly it's like they can't work it out anymore, right? Or Steve just completely forgets that Tony actually is a good person and has and might have some good reasons for behaving the way that he is behaving. And he just becomes a stubborn prick. Instead of saying, well, this is a friend of mine, there must be a reason why he's acting the way he is, which is why, you know, which is why I love Casualties of War, because Christos Gage is like, no, this is actually how they would really respond, right? Although he was forced to still make them give up in the end because he was forced by the event to do that, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that in Casualties of War, he actually has them have a conversation where they actually know each other and love each other as brothers and understand that, yeah, they probably do have good reasons for choosing the positions that they've chosen, right? But in the main book itself, it's like Steve has completely forgotten who Tony is and that he is actually on the side of good, and maybe there's something going on there that is making him take the position he's taking.
It's kind of like in the military where you have competent what do you call it, field officers trying to implement an incompetent Pentagon's strategic decisions. It's the competent writers trying to figure out what to do with the incompetent Marvel administration's event decisions.
Yeah, exactly. That's completely what it feels like.
Yeah, very, very, very much. Another thing. Well, just to go back a few minutes, because I'm not sure I agree with you, right, Geek, about the pro reg side. I don't know if you want to go into a segue on that, or if you just want to move on. But
I'd be interested in that because okay, so I said I'm anti-reg. The problem is we've got kids. It's a universe where kids can blow up, right? So in a universe where kids can blow up, it's sort of like, well, that would have different rules from our universe. So would you say, like, would you even like grant that the pro-reg people even have an argument? And I'm sure you've got, like, do you have any like galaxy brain takes on like the creating clones of Norse god stuff?
I have so many galaxy brain takes. Well, you see, in the 15th century, there was this very obscure. Well, as far as the pro reg thing with kids blowing up, this was actually something that I touched on last time. This is a universe in which kids blow up fairly regularly, I would expect. Right, this is a place where people are used to things like, the Green Goblin showing up in Times Square and lobbing bombs at people. So, like, I don't think the whole Stanford explosion thing was good. Obviously, I'm not going to say like, oh, it doesn't matter that a bunch of kids died. But I would expect, given what I know about the Marvel universe, which granted is probably less so than your experience with Marvel, Marmaduke. My main experience with Marvel comes from like 90s anti-hero kind of stuff, like again, the Punisher and X-Men, Wolverine. Yes, that kind of like darker and grittier Marvel experience. But even in classic stuff, the Marvel universe wasn't exactly just white picket fences and everyone's fine. There's always that threat of a supervillain showing up and causing massive damage, and that's why you need the superheroes, etc., etc. So my perspective, I would think that if I were living in the Marvel universe and I heard that a school had blown up, my first reaction would be like, oh, it's Tuesday again, right? Like, yeah, it's terrible, but this kind of stuff happens regularly, and it wouldn't be as big of a push. And now I know Right Geek made some very good comments about it, and she even had some textual evidence to support it, that there had already been this kind of deep state machination plan going on, right? Like the plan to 6 Sentinels on all the superheroes, and they were just kind of looking for an excuse, which ironically or not, I don't think it's ironic. I think it was very intentional. But that was a common left-wing perspective on 9/11 and the Patriot Act and neoconservative agendas, right? Like the idea was that all this was in place ahead of time, and the government was just waiting for an excuse to spring the death of civil liberties on us and all that kind of stuff. So I think
until COVID hits, and then all of the political persuasions flip 180
yeah,
degrees.
well,
Over.
and that was something else that I was making. I was really sad reading this because, you know, I kept thinking to myself, like, this could never be made again, right? Or not at least in the next decade or two, because if you had you know, if you had a job at Marvel and they're like, hey, we're going to have this big Civil War type event, what would wind up happening is there'd be like some disease and all the superheroes would have to get vaccinated, and all the superheroes would get vaccinated, and all the supervillains would decide not to get vaccinated, and then there'd be just, you know, like a classic fight, superhero versus supervillain.
Captain America's anti-vax.
Well, I mean, he is a Hydra, so you know. You'd have to be very explicit that he's the Hydra agent, right? And there'd be no kind of moral gray area. But yeah, so just as far as the kids blowing up, right? I didn't think the kids blowing up was enough of a reason. You know, I'm really sorry I'm saying this, but I don't think kids blowing up is enough of a reason to pass the regulations, at least in a Marvel universe.
All right. So you mean that in the context of the Marvel universe, they've had stuff like this happen to them before, so it doesn't make sense why this would be such a big deal.
It would make sense if you look at it as, you know, this is the deep state just pulling off, you know, some big conspiracy theory in order to get the regulations passed, and Tony is trying to make the best of a bad situation, kind of thing. But I think, like, rationally and reasonably speaking, no, you know, it wasn't even superheroes that blew up the kids either, you know. It was a supervillain that blew up the kids, and the supervillain blew up the kids ostensibly because the superheroes weren't being cautious enough. But I'm not sure that's the case either. You know, I know they tried to play it up as like a Jake Paul, Logan Paul kind of YouTube stunt, you know, pre-YouTube at that point, but
which is another kind of ugly thing where it's like they took these like less popular 90s characters and decided to turn them into like a big fat joke, right?
Especially Night Thrash. You know, is one of your boy Zach's favorite characters.
Oh yeah, skateboarding billionaire.
Yeah, he went out like a B word, but and the other thing that I think I would disagree on is the idea that superheroes should care what normies think, right? I think superheroes...
Now, sometimes they reference that, right? Like they have Doctor Strange like joke, well, who do I answer to? I'm an immortal wizard who lives in like the magic plane, right? Right?
Yeah.
Like it makes sense for Captain America to care about what the American government thinks, but for so many of them, it's sort of like, because the Marvel universe is so magical, like why would they even care about who's getting elected? They're off in space half the time.
Yeah, well, I think, and even more than that, right? Like the idea that you know, a thing can be moral simply because, you know, 51% of the voting public decides that it's moral, right? Because this gets back to, again, I think the overall moral story of Civil War was this struggle between Tony Stark's utilitarianism and Captain America's deontology, like rules ethics kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, no compromise, right?
Yeah, no compromise,
Yeah.
and I'm very much in favor of that sort of no compromise kind of attitude. And as soon as you start introducing like I guess I'm a superhero Republican rather than a superhero Democrat, right? You know, in the sense of republicanism versus democratic governments, right? Like I don't think that
you need a constitutional limit on power, otherwise you have the tyranny of the majority.
Yeah,
which is kind of a theme of
normies can decide.
Which was kind of a theme of X-Men. It was sort of like the situation X-Men were in. Finally, all superheroes were in the same position the X-Men used to be in all the time.
Yeah. Okay, but if I could jump in just for a second, I generally I agree with you, Punchy, that that morality shouldn't be decided by 51% of the population, absolutely. But I don't think that the argument then becomes that the ethical argument then becomes we don't care about the normies at all. Okay, I think I don't think it should be that dichotomy.
Oh, sure.
I think that yeah, because here's another way to look at it. You could look at the superheroes as the elites of this society because they have, you know, more capability, more power, right? They are the elites, right? And the elites have a certain noblesse oblige, right? To you know, they can't just lord their power over the people who don't have the power. One of the things that is, you know, the constant theme in the Spider-Man comics is with great power comes great responsibility. Well, what is that responsibility? It's responsibility to the normal people around you who aren't superpowered, right? So, yeah, obviously we don't want, you know, political majorities to decide what is moral, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I don't think we can ignore if a large proportion of the normies in a society, leaving aside that this entire situation is contrived to begin with, which we did go over that last week, but just treating it as it is contained in this event. If a large proportion of the society is suddenly uncertain or distrustful of what you're doing, that's something you need to pay attention to. You don't want to say, well, screw what the normies think, because basically that's what the elites in our society are doing right now, and to terrible effect, right? So, so there is a middle. I think there's a middle position here between let the majority decide morality and screw the majority that I think needs to be considered.
Well, okay. Part of this might be the government side of the issue versus the personal side of the issue. Like, so I am like firmly on the anti-reg side, but I also think like Captain America handled this situation like horribly stupidly. Like he didn't even want he wanted to overthrow the American government without killing a single person. That was Captain America's brilliant plan.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say like, yeah, okay, you can care about what the normies think up to a certain point, but I'm not sure that the point that you can get to is, okay, if the normies want us to be drafted into a government agency with all this power and all this money, right? Because we're not just talking about like normies saying, hey, you know, you guys should save more puppies instead of saving kitties all the time, or something like that. Right? This is very much a case of normies saying, hey, we want you to go and do this horrible idea that didn't work out in One Punch Man, which was something else that we got into, Marmaduke. I don't know.
Oh yeah, he had this theory that if Iron Man had read One Punch Man, the entire Civil War would have been averted.
Yeah, it would have been averted immediately. Because One Punch Man is very much a post-Civil War storyline, and you can see right off the bat as you go into One Punch Man, many of the problems that superheroes were supposedly suffering under, quote unquote, prior to regulation, only got worse after regulation. But you know, so just in regards to the normies, like this isn't just the normies saying, hey, we want, you know, something reasonable. This is them making unreasonable requests, right? So that's
essentially enslavement to the state. Was it ever established anywhere if you could just voluntarily quit being a superhero, or were they going to come after you if you had superpowers, regardless of whether you quit or not?
I'm pretty sure they were coming after you. That was the impression that I got, and of course, knowing the X-Men, you know, that's exactly what they do. You're either kicked down by the Sentinels or you're shot down by the Sentinels, right?
Yeah.
There's no middle ground.
Right, and it's essentially enslavement. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit uncertain about that because Ben Grimm did F off to France in the Fantastic Four books and go after him.
Well, that's outside of the
So-
United States, though, because it's made quite clear that this law is only going to pertain to the United States, and of course, a lot of the superheroes decide to f off out of the United States once the registration gets passed. So.
Yeah, but I think it is still ambiguous because the heroes that they were going after were heroes that were active and not necessarily someone who decided to retire. I don't think there was ever a case where someone just decided to retire being a superhero and they still went after him. I don't recall a case like that.
What's weird is I feel like they didn't do a good job establishing that, because I recall some lines like the government saying, well, you can't be active, right? But then they also have like the Sentinels hunting down people. So I guess, and maybe like the government conspiracy part would still hunt you down, but maybe like the regular senators, the people who the government conspiracy are controlling, maybe they'd be fine with you just retiring, but not the evil the Sentinel shadow government. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that Tony would be fine with it because he, when they gave the order to go after Spider-Man, for example, he strenuously objected. So I think that at least this is just my opinion, but I think Tony was the one that was giving the orders to non-lethal force, use the tranquilizer darts, not the high explosives.
Yeah, I think Tony would be fine with it too. That's
tranquilizer darts and the clone of a god. Yeah, 0 to 100.
Either way works really.
Clone of a god, but let me point out that they did not intend the clone of a god to kill anyone. Just FYI.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with these regulations. Like, you never intend them to be terrible and horrible and lead to the
you
death.
never intend. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, that's how it works. In the end, that's how it works out, because bad people get in, and you invite the supervillains in to help you, and Tony gets kicked out of S.H.I.E.L.D., and all this. Captain America turns out to be behind it.
I'm arguing slightly pro-reg here does not mean that I absolutely am, but
you see the story from their side. Yeah. Well, it's like what's Brutus? It's like Brutus and Julius Caesar. We get a chance to see Brutus's inner psychology before he puts a knife in his best friend's back. Yeah.
Another thing I was wondering for Marmaduke, because again we went into this in the last stream. I'm not sure what your take would be. Was Punisher. Did you have any thoughts about the Punisher's role in Civil War?
Yeah. Okay. So when he shows up in the main book, he rescues Spider-Man, and it's sort of like Captain America's put in the situation. Well, gee, do I work with this guy? He's willing to work with us. He's really capable. So ironically, Captain America's put in kind of like the exact same position Tony's in, where now he has to start thinking strategically and start thinking pragmatically. It was sort of like it was foolish of Captain America to think that Punisher, who walks around with a skull on his chest, isn't going to start killing people. I feel like, Captain America acts true to form when Frank Castle kills a couple people, and then Cap loses his cool and beats him up. And it's a great scene because like even Frank Castle admires Captain America. So it's a great scene. It just feels like maybe another example where, because there's a central flaw to the premise of the story, right? Like because it's hard for me to take the whole story seriously, it's also hard for me to take this scene seriously, where they've pushed Captain America into this situation where he feels like he has to work with the Punisher. Would the real Captain America ever be pushed into a situation where he felt like he had to work with the Punisher? Why didn't he see this coming in the first place? I guess I like that scene in that it's kind of making a neat contrast between Frank Castle's perspective of kill the murderers and Captain America's perspective of don't kill anybody. But it's so hard for me to take it serious, the premise seriously. It's hard for me to analyze it and, I don't know, play out the morality of it. What was your could you summarize your thoughts on that for me? Punchy, right? Like, are you like in the pro Frank Castle, like kill the murderers camp?
Well, all right. I just disclaimer. I am pretty pro Frank Castle. I am pretty pro Punisher. But he's a complicated figure, right? He's a man of contrasts. I mean, he comes out and he's always complaining about murderers and thieves and how much he hates murderers and thieves. And what does he do? Every time you see him, he's either killing someone or he's stealing something, right? So he's a hypocrite, basically. Correct?
But he's not wrong to hate murderers and thieves. It's just the lengths he's pushed himself to. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because this was my take. Like, I don't actually think he's a hypocrite. I think that the Punisher was if anything, he was the most moral character, the most consistent character in the entire Civil War arc. At least in the main arc. There may have been some more consistencies in the better books. Punisher is not a superhero, he's a vigilante. Yeah, sure. He's like a super anti-hero or something, vigilante, super anti-hero. But I do think that he's very moral and that he sticks to his morals. And the reason that I gave for this is that this moratorium on murdering and thieving is not a principle that Frank Castle follows, right? It's a rule that he follows, but his actual principle is, I guess, the non-aggression principle, right? Like, you are not going to be the one who initiates violence against people. You're not going to be the one that goes up and kills an innocent or steals stuff from innocent people. But as soon as you've violated that principle, right? You've become the murderer, you've become the thief. Then it's 100% justified to go off and kill people and to rob them of whatever, magical suits of armor they've got, or information they have stored in their skyscraper building, or what have you, right? Like, he's not opposed to killing as an act. He's simply opposed to people who kill as initiatory violence against innocents, right?
Right, which is what makes him sort of a legend, where the bad guys are actually afraid of him in a way they're not afraid of any of the mainstream Marvel superheroes. Yeah,
because he's willing to do whatever it takes to put the pain into these bad guys, but he's also got that moral grounding where he's only going to go after the bad guys and he's going to focus on the bad guys. And I think that whole fight between the Punisher and Captain America was actually really, really great. I think that was the Shakespearean climax of the entire series, because as you notice, as Captain America is beating the crap out of him, he's on the verge of killing the Punisher, and he's like, hey, why aren't you fighting back? And the Punisher says something to the effect of, I'm not going to fight you, right?
Yeah.
Because he knows that Captain America isn't one of these murderers and thieves. He knows that Captain America is a good guy, right? A good superhero with good moral grounding, even though they disagree, right? Like, I think Captain America was absolutely justified given his own moral code in beating up the Punisher. If it were me, I would have clapped and cheered and been like, yeah, shoot him in the face. But I think one of the real strengths of Captain America is the fact that he's this very deontological superhero who's able to stick by his moral code through thick and thin. And the Punisher recognizes this, and he's like, okay, you know what, you can beat me to death, and that's fine, because you're not the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And of course,
Frank is punishing evil in part because he actually does love the good, and Captain America sort of represents the good to everyone who's following him, even Frank. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Ransom, right? In book 2 of the Out of the Silent Planet series, right? Where he just suddenly hauls off and punches the guy in the face and breaks his jaw off and throws him into a bit of fire, kind of thing. Just really, really violent, unbelievably violent and based.
Stop tempting my waifu.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I mean, I can see Captain America probably wouldn't do something like that, right? You know, I mean, he might beat up the guy, but he wouldn't go and throw him into a lake of fire to burn for all eternity. But the Punisher would, and you know, the Punisher has that kind of moral grounding where he knows who his enemies are, and he knows who his friends are, and he knows who just the neutral parties that he shouldn't mess with are, right? And I think this is something that every other superhero, except for the Thing, which we also got into right at the end, every superhero except for the Punisher and the Thing had kind of forgotten that, right? You know, throughout the course of Civil War. And obviously they have to forget it because it's a storyline about superheroes punching each other in the face. And if, you know, if the superheroes don't forget, hey, you know, I shouldn't punch superheroes in the face, and you've got no storyline at all. But
Yeah.
you know, the Punisher is like the one guy at that moment who remembers who his friends are and who remembers what a superhero should be. And I think this is why in the subsequent battle, right, you know, there's that big fight between Iron Man and Captain America, and that very final scene when Captain America is about to finish off Iron Man, and they have a panel which is a callback to that moment where Captain America is about to finish off Punisher, and he realizes that he's doing the wrong thing or that he's fighting the wrong person, right? And
he literally has a fireman. He has a fireman and a policeman and a nurse and a soldier tackle him just to underscore the point.
Then they jump in immediately after. You can see it in his eyes. He's in the same pose. He sees the Thing, you know, the city blown up, and then all the normies, you know, the everyday heroes kind of come rushing in, and it's that Punisher moment again, right? Like he's thinking back to the Punisher and to the Punisher's firm grasp of moral conflict, and that's the whole reason why he loses in the end. So that's why I was saying before that I think the Punisher kind of screwed him over in that respect. But yeah, so I think the Punisher was at once the greatest hero of the story, as well as, you know, the turd in the punch bowl that screwed up the anti-reg. Because, you know, if he had have gone one step further, you know, if Captain America had just forgotten his morals for one more panel, it might have all been different. But no, instead, you know, anti-reg loses.
Well, and again, what was Cap's end goal? It was sort of like,
yeah, I don't know.
Did he?
Really.
Will I kill Tony Stark? Well, gee.
Stop trying to
I'll start a war until I'm dramatically standing over Tony Stark, and when I get to that moment, then I'll decide whether I'll kill Tony Stark and end the war.
Yes, they punch each other, and then whoever gets punched
I'm ready to die, by the way, in that period.
What was that?
Sorry.
At that point, I'd like to point out that at that point, Tony was ready to die. He basically told him, "Go ahead, finish it," because he was ready to die at that point. So,
which makes a little bit more sense with the info about Iron Man in there, where Tony's also kind of like desperately depressed about his own course of actions, even though he thinks he's right. Yeah, it didn't make much sense in just like the mainline book without that info. Just like, well, is Tony a simp? What's going on in Tony's mind, right?
I mean, he is kind of a simp.
Basically, it was Tony was in this giant fight with Cap, and then Cap has basically bested him and smashed his mask off, and Tony basically relents at that moment. He doesn't keep fighting and just says, "Go ahead and finish it." And it does make sense. It does make sense when you pull in all of the supplementary material where you see that, Iron Man is not the happy warrior for pro reg. Let me just put it that way. But he basically spends a lot of this event crying. So, or at least being very close to crying, and a lot of the post Civil War era too, in that same mood.
It sounds like Is there any character who came off well in Civil War at all? I guess Punisher. Punchy has made the case that Punisher comes across okay in Civil War.
I think Punisher came off well. I think I don't know if the authors really intended that, because I know they had little like snide remarks about the Punisher from all the other superheroes. But I think he came off well, and I think the Thing came off really well as well.
Yeah.
That was actually, I kind of maybe shared too much information, but I cried when the Thing showed up a little bit when I was reading that. I thought it was very touching.
I said last week actually that when I read this the first time, I was texting my brother saying, I'm with Ben, and then later on when I got to the Punisher scene, I was like, I'm with the Punisher. So I think that I fundamentally, like emotionally, I agree with Punchy on who were the ones that actually came off well of anybody. Cameron says the Thing was pretty good. Reed never came back after Civil War. I agree with that. Just as I agree that Captain America didn't really come back, and Tony didn't come back either. So,
yeah, well, just to be clear, just in case Marmaduke's not aware of which part we're talking about, it's the part in the big fight, like the big fight right at the end, when the city's getting blown up and New York's in shambles, and the Thing comes down, and instead of fighting all the other superheroes, he's saving innocents by like pushing debris out of the way and doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So I thought that was really, really great. It was just one panel. Like, he doesn't say anything for the entire duration of at least the mainline books, right? Like, they have the Fantastic Four tie-ins where he does more. But he just shows up in clutch and just boom, actually helps innocent people, which is really weird in a superhero comic book. I would expect him to be punching superheroes in the face, but no. Apparently, some of them
works
do,
because they have
do help innocents.
It works because they're having Thing do the thing we all know superheroes are supposed to do, in contrast to all the other heroes who are acting out of character.
Yeah.
Yeah, but other than those two, I think those were the only ones. And maybe Black Panther, because he went full base Donald Trump ethno state. So that was pretty great to see that back 10 years before that became mainstream. So yeah, good for Black Panther.
It's okay to be a hyper-nationalist if you are a Wakandan. Yeah, that's the exception.
Yeah. Yeah, and Cameron was bringing up the Illuminati, too. One of those terrible ideas. One of those terrible ideas, the Illuminati, yeah. And yeah, I think that fundamentally she's right about Reed. I know last week Punchy was saying that he thought Reed was just an autistic putz in this event, and
he only cares about the science.
Oh god.
Well,
yeah.
Well, the closest we get is that Reed did math to figure out what would happen if the anti-reg side won. So that was his way of siphoning, scrying the future. Was he just did math and decided, everybody's gonna die if the anti-regs win, so I'm gonna just invent
like Harry Seldon or something. Yeah.
I was gonna say. I mean, that's something progressives actually do, right? Like, the lizards are very fond of making these supposedly mathematical predictions and modeling the world, and so I thought that was rather nice from the dystopian point of view. But
yeah, I think Cameron is right that since Civil War, that's pretty much how they've written Reed. It's just an autistic putz who only cares about the science and not about the human element, which isn't actually consistent with earlier versions of the character. So yeah, so Reed has been destroyed too. So
it even struck me how passive aggressive Sue Storm's note to Reed was. Oh, I'll have sex with you one last time. It's good for your heart condition or something, right? Like, I just don't like anybody
I mean,
Yeah,
well,
actually,
I thought that was nice, though. I appreciate that she was thinking of him, uh, you know, even at that
Well,
like late hour.
well, okay, the sex part was nice, not the passive aggressive. You're such you. I'll have sex with you, you nerd. Reed. Hey, why don't you take care of our children for once?
Well, that was something else that got brought up. I know chat was asking about who the children actually are. Like, did Reed get cucked? That kind of thing. I'm not sure if you have a perspective on that or.
I don't know. I believe unless there's some retcon they've come up with. Because the weird thing is their children are technically mutants, right? I think someone in the comment mentioned that they're technically mutants. So I guess the Fantastic Four became mutants through solar radiation, which means that they now pass on the same mutant gene that regular birth mutants have. That was my interpretation of it. Maybe someone's suspecting that I don't know, like Wolverine's banging Sue behind the scenes or something.
Well, I think it was Namor, right? Yeah.
Namor.
Oh yeah, that weird
somebody
scene.
commented
Yeah.
that they thought that Dan Slott was going to reveal that Namor was the father of Franklin, at least. So, which would be typical of Dan Slott. Actually, I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility, because I think he was tweeting a while back, who wants to read a comic about a healthy family that gets along with each other, or something to that effect, or who wants to read a comic about a healthy marriage? And a bunch of us on Twitter were like, raise hand. Like, yes, you actually can have drama in a healthy marriage. Just FYI.
Right. It's literally it's literally conflict resolution. Like half of Mary Jane and Spider-Man's arguments were about like, oh, well, you're so busy superheroing, you can't take me on a date. So like then Peter Parker would have to make time to take Mary Jane on it. It's really exactly the same kind of charm of, will they, won't they, tete-a-tete, but they actually have to like solve their marital problems. Yeah. So, but that's me hoping that you actually get positive role models of fathers and mothers in comics, which weird man children have a harder time writing that when they could just have them punching each other.
Yeah, weird man children that evidently have never been in a healthy relationship like that.
I always think of that Dan Slott meme of him sitting in that gross brick apartment with like piles of McDonald's crumbs around him.
Yeah.
I was wondering too, because I think I touched on this last time, but the whole Namor Sue thing, if that might be referenced in The Boys, but I don't think you, Right Geek, or possibly not you, Marmaduke, have seen or read The Boys.
I've only seen commercials for it. Haven't read it or seen it. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't encourage you to. It's it's rather grim, but it's very much one of these like post Civil War regulation kind of things. It's like if One Punch Man had all the charm and humanity stripped out of it. But there is a side story where the not Aquaman stand-in and the Sue Storm kind of stand-in have this Me Too moment. So I was wondering if maybe there was some kind of behind-the-scenes thing where people in that industry are kind of building towards like a Namor Sue Storm thing, and that they're all kind of aware of it, but I don't know. I don't know enough about the industry to be able to say. So if you haven't seen The Boys, so you wouldn't know anything about it.
Right, and I don't know enough about like romantic subplots in the broader Marvel universe. Like I know the scene you're talking about. Like they're clearly hinting there's something between Sue and Namor, but I'm not sure if that I don't know if that's something they were coming up with for Civil War, or if they're referencing like any of the old like, oh, I love her, but I can never tell her plots from like the Stan Lee era.
Actually, in the Stan Lee era, Namor did have a thing for her.
All right, cool. I never know with Marvel whether there's like a really cool like Marvel history explanation for it, or if it's something brand new. But
Yeah.
that's actually pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's actually quite old. So.
Yeah, that was one of my issues too, all throughout this. Like, what's his name, the hippie guy? Like, I assumed that he had been in Iron Man before, and like Keith told me that he wasn't.
Yeah,
he was
he asked me last week, is Sal an established character? And I was like, no, Warren Ellis invented him for Extremis. He never existed before then. So.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was like deep lore or something. I was trying to look around online to get all the deep lore on him, and there wasn't much. And I was like, oh god, I gotta go back and read all these 1960s comic books just to figure out who the hell he is. But
he was invented by Warren Ellis, and he dies pretty quickly after Civil War.
Oh no!
The opening 4 issues of the Iron Man Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. in that storyline, he dies. So. Hello? Are we there?
Hey, I'm here.
Hello?
Yo, I was looking at the chat. So at your chat. Sorry.
Yeah.
Cameron thinks something is hilarious, but I'm not sure what we were referencing at the time. Oh, how is Miss Marvel? Miss Marvel just sort of like just joins in Tony's camp. It's sort of like Miss Marvel and She-Hulk just say, yeah, people should be registered, whatever. I didn't see too much of them. There wasn't much explanation of what their thought process was. They just sort of said, yeah, we'll go along with that.
Yeah, that was the impression that I got. I mean, I wasn't paying much attention to Ms. Marvel, but I was paying attention to She-Hulk for no particular reason. And she didn't really.
I think Margaret Duke fan tweeted about the reason why you would want to follow She-Hulk last night.
Right. That was the best part of Civil War, was She-Hulk strutting around in her skimpy outfit. There we go. The whole event was worth it just for that.
Yeah, it was like right on her butt shot. Yeah, in one panel.
Well, and they had Ed McGuinness come in for as a guest artist for one of the issues, and he's just like classic great talent.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you just draw a bunch of pretty girls, I'll just shut off my critical brain and say, wow, pretty. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah, see, exactly. Like I was making this point last time, right? Like I know people really rag on Civil War for being a crappily written and dumb and absurd and the end of Marvel. But I'm actually okay with superheroes punching each other in the face and pretty girls and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm very lowbrow when it comes to my tastes. It's nice when there's other stuff as well, right? Like when you have like the Thing saving civilians, that was also kind of nice. But I think it's all good as long as you can have that kind of human element where the Thing shows up and does something nice. Then you can have all the superheroes punching each other in the face that you want, right? Like I'm not opposed to superheroes punching each other in the face. I'm just
so that you're saying they can get you to they can get you to support the pro reg side as long as they just have like She-Hulk and Miss Marvel coming in and keepy outfits, right? With like pro reg on either side.
Maria Hill was my pro reg argument. I'd go for that. That would be okay with me. But then of course you'd have to ask.
What about?
Yep, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, hey, what about Maya Hansen? This is strictly an Iron Man comic thing, but.
Oh boy, what was the character's name again?
Maya Hansen.
I don't remember. Oh, I don't remember. Dang it.
She is the one who developed Extremis.
Oh, okay. Okay. Prior to Civil War. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, prior to Civil War, she was the one that developed the Strebus, and she became kind of Tony's love interest in this period, kind of. So,
Like he doesn't have enough of those.
Yeah.
Punchy, you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, having some.
We were talking about the hot girls of Civil War, so.
Yeah. No, I heard you. I've been having some network issues. Yeah, Maya Hansen was fine. Tony. Again, we've discussed Tony Stark's love life at great length on Twitter and on other streams. So that would require an entire show.
That's a separate stream. The tragic and multi-layered love life of Tony Stark. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was actually something else we were getting into. At the end, right? Not just like the love interests, as well as like turning characters gay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I did make some jokes about that in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that, I mean, what do you think?
Wait. You guys talk while I try to find something.
All right.
Okay. Well, what would you think about that, Marmaduke? Because I know somebody had brought up like Tim Drake turning gay or something, which I would think would be perfectly reasonable since everyone knows that Robin's gay anyways. But they're
usually talking about Dick Grayson era Robin, where he had the green pants and he'd go on picnics with Batman, right? I don't know. I'm also kind of like at the point where DC feels a little skin suited too.
Yeah.
I've just kind of felt like, but actually, someone had made the joke that if they were going to do it to anybody, they should have done it to Dick Grayson, since he's already kind of like a fan service character for girls. So that would have like gotten like the, I don't know, yaoi fan fiction writers super excited.
Well, the Fujoshi fans would be coming out.
Well, it's sort of like in Tim Drake's case, they also haven't really cared that much about him. Like they just said, "Oh, you're Red Robin. We're going to shove you off to the side." So as soon as DC doesn't care about you anymore, then you become gay.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was making a joke last time about how the way things are going, before we know it, Tony Stark is going to be gay, and
or pansexual. That'd be a good out.
The reason because and the reason is I can already anticipate all the arguments in favor of it, and it includes things like this. This is from Death of Captain America, when they're burying him in the Arctic, right? And he says, Steve, these are things I wanted to say in front of everyone in Arlington, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I know that if our roles were reversed, you could have. If, God forbid, the funeral had been for someone else, you would have helped me through it. I wanted us all to be here today. The Hulk, Thor, the Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye. And this is the moment that my computer decides to crap out, of course. Your teammates, your friends, they are all one way or another lost to us. And now I've lost you too. Maybe there was a reason you had to be on the other side of every argument. How you could be my rudder, steering me when others couldn't. I don't know if I can do it without you. I certainly won't do it as well. Come on. I miss your battle cry. That kind of stuff, right? That's it.
That was well set up,
of course,
too.
In modern day fandom, because of course he wanted to say I am Iron Man, but that kind of stuff, that sort of emotional stuff, because of course in modern day fandom, men can't be emotionally with each other unless they're gay, right?
Yeah,
that's what makes me think that before too long they're gonna decide that Tony Stark is at least well, they'll have to say bisexual because there's no way they would get away with gay.
I don't know.
Given
I wouldn't
the,
underestimate them. I would not underestimate them.
They have what's her name? They have Jean Grey mind control him. Tony, you're gay. What? You're gay. Bleep. Oh, okay.
What? Yeah. Okay.
No, it'll be one of those beard situations, right? Like they'll just make the argument that he was involved with women, but that was because it was the before times and he had to fake it and he wasn't being honest with himself. But now, he was always throwing women off to his friends, right? To Happy and everything, and he's got a very dysfunctional relationship with women. So I can definitely see them making him full blown. I don't think they should. Now I would disavow that, but I definitely think they could, and they possibly
That's why I was making the joke, because I do think that people would I wouldn't put it past them, and then there will be all these people online justifying it, right? For the reason that he's had a dysfunctional relationship with women, but not in the sense that he's not attracted to them, because I think that a lot of the love interests he's had, the interest that he's had in them has been absolutely genuine, to the point that if they get killed, aka Janice Cord, he becomes an emotional wreck about it. So so I don't think they can do the beard argument and just say, oh, he was faking it, because it seemed very, very real in those early comics, which is why I'm thinking they would have to say bisexual. But of course, as Zach would say, once you're bisexual, you never go back. You're going to be with men forever. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole seduction of the innocent thing, except now it's actually coming true. Now it's not just, some kooky communist guy writing it in his book. Now it's literally the entire industry has decided it's a great idea.
I just gotta save that meme of C.S. Lewis saying something like, "Those who cannot imagine a close relationship without it being sexual prove that they have never had a friend." Just so I can just get, I need to save that on my desktop so I can just constantly post it, because I'd use it every other week.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, that's where that kind of went at the end of the last stream. So anyway.
Well, one thing I was going to ask Marmaduke, what about like all the side characters? Because this was something that we'd gone into as well. Obviously, the main Civil War focuses mostly on Iron Man and Captain America. There are these brief segues into the Punisher, as well as Reed and Sue. But other than those characters, there isn't really much in the way of side characters. They do get their own books, their own sort of side character Civil War arcs. But did you have any particular resonance with any of these side characters that maybe got underutilized, or that Spider-Man too? I guess he was another kind of main character, and
right.
people were upset about him being ranked.
He was the linchpin that started out pro-reg and then switched to anti-reg, right? So
right. I feel like they knew they had to give Spider-Man a significant arc, because if Iron Man and Tony Stark are theoretically the alpha chads of the Marvel universe, Spider-Man's actually the flagship character in terms of sales, partly because of his underdog, partially because of his underdog status, right? So like there was no way they were not going to have Spider-Man be significant. I think there was this great line Tony Stark had where he said, "You disappointed people on both sides. You disappointed everybody." Where it was like that was a little too meta, right? I guess it's sort of like, because Peter cares about people getting hurt, I actually can see an argument for why he'd say, "Oh yeah, I don't want people to get hurt. I'll join the pro-reg side." And then it actually kind of strikes me that what bugs Tony is Iron Man's tactics. So it's sort of like he goes through the process of saying, yeah, initially I think there is a good argument for this. When Tony starts doing evil crap, it's sort of like Spider-Man's conscience wakes up and he has to defect. And I think he even has like a line, not as disappointed as I am in myself. It's tough because
good line.
It's tough because I sort of see like if Captain America is like the pure-hearted hero, I sort of see Spider-Man as the guy who he's the ordinary guy, but he's the guy who does make the right decision when it counts. So it's a little weird that he went along with the pro-reg side initially anyway, but he does strike me as the type of guy who is, I don't know, maybe dumb enough or neurotic enough that he'd actually like put himself into that position and then have to like morally struggle to get out of it, right? So I didn't mind that. Yeah. It just feels like Spider-Man's like the King Cuck of the Marvel universe, where first he reveals his secret identity to everybody, and then he changes his mind and becomes an outlaw. Absolutely no one is more screwed over than Peter Parker at the end of Civil War. That fits with his history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they go into that in some of like the postscript adventures or something. How like now his entire family is in danger and they're all upset, and like I could maybe see him being pro-reg. I think he would more likely be anti-reg, but I could see him going pro-reg. Revealing his identity was a bit much for me. That was a bit hard to swallow. Maybe if they had built it up more, or given us more reason to believe that he would take that step, but yeah, poor Spider-Man.
Well, they even make a point that in his history he has incredibly good reasons to want to guard his secret identity. There actually is a really good line about this where Captain America and Iron Man are having their back and forth, and Cap accuses Tony of sort of abusing his relationship with Peter. I think Cap has the line that Peter wears his need for a father figure on his sleeve, and you're abusing that to Tony. And then Tony comes back, well, you're abusing your position as Captain America to inspire these people. None of them would really be fighting if you weren't the one leading them, which is actually a pretty neat observation because it sort of shows that Cap is observant of Spider-Man's, I guess, struggles as a hero. It's like Cap wants to be everyone's dad in the superhero game. So that was one neat line. I just feel like Spider-Man's been, we've seen Spider-Man as a kid. And I actually think there was this disagreement between Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, where Steve Ditko felt like after Spider-Man lifted a bunch of crap off of his shoulders, that was Spider-Man becoming a man and he shouldn't be like a simpy kid anymore. I feel like I've seen Pete as a dumb teenager. Now I kind of want to start seeing Pete as a capable adult a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I'm more team like simpy teenager because I think there's a lot of capable adult superheroes out there. So one of the things that I really liked about Spider-Man was the fact that he was just kind of a dumb kid who had funny quips and swung around and was kind of naive. But one thing that I did really like about that whole setup, I think, yeah, I'm going to say that it actually redeems how stupid the reg setup was that one visual gag with Jonah when he realizes who Spider-Man really is and he passes out. I thought that was great. I loved that.
Yeah,
I think it redeems the horrible storyline of Spider-Man revealing his identity. Got a good payoff, so I'm okay with it. Ultimately, it's still a horrible storyline, but I'll give it a pass.
which they later erased so that Spider-Man had his secret identity again, so that he could reveal his secret identity to J. Jonah Jameson because comic book continuity.
Yeah, and that's something else we were going into, things like retconning and Marvel time and how this whole thing works. Like, do you know much about Marvel time, mom. And
Yeah, it's that there's like a sliding scale where the 60s in Marvel time were like 10 years ago, right? Like they go through our events, but they go through our events faster, which is how you could explain how Iron Man. They might just retcon it by having Iron Man's Vietnam become Afghanistan, right?
Yeah, it is.
Or they might,
right now it's Afghanistan, I think so.
Right, but they also might update it by having time move faster. So they went through the 90s, or they went through the 90s and 2000s already in their brief lives. They're boomers and zoomers simultaneously. They're Schrodinger rumors.
Yeah, because I'm more used to like DC with all like the multiple universes and different timelines and completely different planets and all that kind of silliness. I think I like the Marvel time a little bit better, just because the DC approach leads to all kinds of ridiculous BS like the new Mortal Kombat games. But yeah, it's kind of confusing sometimes, like when they're referencing like 1960s events and you're like, wait, what? Hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Should have been Switzerland.
Warsword says the FF should have been Switzerland in the Civil War. Public figure superheroes, meaning they should have been neutral because they're the superheroes that everyone knows who they are.
Well, I don't know. Like, since this is ostensibly like again, this is supposed to be dystopias. We're talking about great dystopian works of art and literature here.
Or not so great in this case.
Or not so great. Some barely passable dystopian literature. But I think from the perspective of like a work of dystopian literature, I think at least Reed should have been on the pro reg, because Reed really does embody this sort of progressive trope of
scientific ruling class.
Yeah, the scientific ruling class. I mean, Iron Man does too. But he's a lot more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Like he's the good lizard. He's the lizard that he's the Boromir lizard, right? He's the guy that thinks that he can use the ring for good, and he genuinely does think he can use it for good. He's not a bad person.
Yes.
He's just dumb, right? He's just doesn't have the foresight to see his own limitations in this particular area. Whereas Reed, it's this idea of the banality of evil, right? How you can get these really sort of weedy, banal little characters who go and do great evil, not out of particular malice, but just because they're autistic bosses, basically.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, right, like as a dystopian story, I think it's very appropriate to have Reed as a pro reg superhero. Like I could see why people would want them to be Switzerland. One of the things that I was a little slightly upset about, slightly happy about, was the X-Men, how the X-Men were basically Switzerland and they stayed out of the whole thing. Because obviously, like, they weren't going to go pro reg because they've been regged for generations.
Yeah.
Yeah, they know how it works. They know exactly what it's like to have these Sentinels standing there staring at you. And I mean, oddly enough, like, they do have their own school for mutants, right? Like, it's not exactly a regulatory thing. It's kind of their own decision to have this training for mutant superheroes, but they've been down that road and they've had to make it work themselves. So, having them abstain from it, I guess that makes sense. Since they're just kind of peed off, and they're like the Native Americans, right? They don't really care what happens to the U.S. federal government because they hate the U.S. federal government. But they're certainly not going to join the regulations. So I had mixed opinions about that. But Fantastic Four, I would say I'm happy with them being pro reg. But I could definitely see how if you were a Fantastic Four stan or something, really fond of them, that it would be dissatisfying. I mean, I would have been dissatisfied too if I was a bigger fan of Fantastic Four. So
Yeah,
this might have been when Marvel was starting to dislike the Fantastic Four because they didn't own the movie rights to them anymore. But when did Disney acquire Marvel?
Oh, is that why? Okay.
Oh, to the point where they erased the Fantastic Four out of like old art, right? Because they just didn't want to advertise the Fantastic Four at all. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's horrible.
So the Fantastic Four got the Stalin treatment. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the Trotskyites of the Marvel world.
And Warzord is right that the original Reed Richards was the kind of autistic scientist, but he was supposed to be the ethical scientist that did things in an ethical way, in contrast to Dr. Doom, right, who was the scientist who did things for his own evil purposes, right? So it's a shift. The Civil War period represents a shift in how Reed Richards is being characterized that Reed Richards has not really recovered from since then, as we kind of said earlier.
So hang on. Is what you're saying that the original Reed Richards would not create a Thor death robot that murders a man and then have his first reaction be like, "Oh, that's peculiar. It wasn't supposed to do that. Yes. Oh well, I'll just fix him."
Yes.
That's odd. Why would
that is precisely what I'm saying.
That's very odd. You know, I can't see a superhero being more bothered about it than that. But go on.
Just like I think I can also say pretty confidently that the old Tony Stark wouldn't endorse the creation of a Thor robot, although he would be as broken up about it as he actually was in the event when it goes off and kills people, right? Yeah, I've made the argument on my blog and elsewhere that there was a definite shift in how a lot of these characters were written. Reed, we just said, there was a shift in how Tony was written too. I've said that the arrogance thing, there in old Iron Man, there is a control freak nature to him that he wants to have absolute control over his circumstances and absolute control, especially over how his technology is going to be used, right? But it doesn't come, like in the old Iron Man, it doesn't come from a sense of, because I am the best one who can control this. It comes from a sense of overwhelming responsibility and guilt that if something bad happens because somebody misused his technology, then it's his fault, right? Right. That's a very different motivation than I want control over my technology because I'm the only one smart enough to have that technology. A completely different motivation. So there was a definite shift there. Maybe Pym would have done that. Warzard says maybe Pym would have created the Thor robot. After all, he is the one who created Ultron. So yeah, it is possible. And Pym was pro-reg too.
And they kind of made the point that I just remember this. Tony made the point. So Captain America pointed to Pym as an example of a time when the superheroes police their own. And Tony said, well, Pym's on my side because Pym sort of knows what it means for a superhero to go off the rails. So it's sort of like because Pym's been a wife beater and has been in jail, it's like Pym has maybe, I guess, more of a high opinion of what the government needing to stop superheroes. I just thought that was like an interesting little nugget that was added in. Like there was some thought put into some of the characters and why they picked the side they picked. But there are just lots of side characters where, that's just the side they're on.
Yeah. But you're doing a lot of citations from that Casualties of War book again, which is why that's my favorite book of the event, because that actually, of all the books, put the most thought into why it was like I said, Christos Gage trying to make lemonade out of a bunch of really rotten lemons, I guess. Doing the best he can with it.
Being generous.
I was trying to think of a good metaphor. Yeah. I was trying to think of a good metaphor. So and Gage bringing up like the one time that Tony was drunk off his gourd and fighting Machine Man, like that's good. Like that's someone that's actually thinking about why
Yeah.
Tony would say, "Oh yeah." The wife beating thing is such BS. Call Batman a child abuser then. LOL.
You guys have heard the story about that, right? That the script originally called for Hank to just shrug his wife off, and then I think the artist was Bob Hall, and so Bob Hall said, "Okay, I'll make the shrugging's boring. I'll make this dramatic." And then he just had Hank bitch slap her across the room and didn't think much about it. And then later, of course, people said, "Wait, that means he's a wife beat." It happened by accident.
Yeah, well, that's making comics the Marvel way, right? It's going to be dynamic. It's going to have motion and energy and action, right? So, I guess if you're in Marvel, you have to beat your wife in that situation, unfortunately.
Wow.
Okay.
And I'm also not so sure you'd want to call Batman a child abuser in current years, since that'll just give them ideas at this point.
Yeah, Frank Miller did a take on that, right? Again, like you go back and it's like Batman takes Robin on picnics. You know, it's not abuse because being Batman's partner would be the most fun thing in the universe. And then once Batman becomes serious, then Batman becomes an abusive dad recruiting child soldiers into his war on crime.
Yeah, that's a good point. He is kind of a dickhead.
True.
Isn't he? Did he recruit the child soldiers into his war on crime, or did he simply provide job opportunities to entrepreneurial children who wished to join his war on crime?
Well, my favorite attempt to explain this is that he was afraid they were going to become vigilantes anyway. So he figures, well, if you're going to become vigilantes anyway, I better teach you like how to not get yourselves killed, right?
Yeah,
right.
So it's pro-reg basically, or well, it's that sort of it's what you were talking about the alternative,
voluntary alternative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like this. I thought it had some parallels with the comics code as well. Since obviously, like, you know, in the real world, right, the comic book industry was faced with, you know, looming government regulation and people cracking down, and that's when the industry itself decided, hey, you know, we're going to clean up our own act and we're going to have our comics code and kind of stuff. So, you know, and that itself was the reasons why I was very skeptical about the reg, because I hated the comics code. You know, I'm sorry to all the like classic comics fans, but I thought that was miserable. So I would have been really skeptical, especially living in a comic book, knowing about the comics code. That would have been horrible. But but yeah, I could see Batman. You know, that's sort of where Batman's coming from. He's just trying to train up Robin the right way.
Yeah.
But I mean, many of these superheroes did have sidekicks at one point at least, right? Like Captain America has had sidekicks.
Bucky, and especially the ones from the Innocent era, yeah.
Yeah,
so
from
just
the World
bring
War
back
II
sidekicks.
era. Yeah, the World War II era Captain America, Bucky is a kid and is Captain America's sidekick. So is Captain America an abusive dad recruiting child soldiers to fight in World War II?
But every kid has to get involved in the fight with Hitler, or how are we ever going to beat him? You got to cut the coupon out of your comic and send it in to get your Captain America badge to prove that you hate Hitler too.
Yeah, and you've seen my tweets. Yeah. I love that. I want one of those badges, but I'm sure that if somebody had an original badge, I'm sure they would be selling it on eBay for like $1,000. Yeah.
Warzord's got some questions about My Hero Academia and One Punch Man.
Where is
it? I know Marmaduke.
I got it.
I've read the first chunk of it. Okay, yeah. All right. So like My Hero Academia, what's interesting about it is like the government does regulate superheroes, but it's sort of like the author. Have you ever read that, Punchy, at all?
I've read a bit of it. I haven't read very much.
Uh,
I actually have more familiarity with the merchandise from going to like doing booths at anime conventions.
yeah.
Very inappropriate stuff, so I don't want to get into it.
Okay, yeah. All right. So yeah, there is like a weird fandom, but it's sort of like
Yeah.
it's like opens up with Deku having like this very anti-egalitarian view where he kind of realizes, man, I'm so weak, and you can't overcome that weakness in life. But then of course he starts like trying to discipline himself to become a superhero. So there's a pretty neat undercurrent. I guess the premise of My Hero Academia is the government did decide to regulate heroes. Your hero persona actually becomes like a public persona where you sell merchandise, and maybe almost like a capitalist thing where the more popular a hero you are, the more rich you can get. So I don't know, it's almost like a weird, I guess, like free market plus government oversight mashup in My Hero Academia. Yeah, it's a really interesting take. Yeah. So I guess Warzord's point is Civil War could have been the premise to, I don't know, building up something like that, but they didn't go that direction, of course. Yeah, that would have been a little too daring and too different for Marvel to try, I think.
Yeah, I mean that was basically my thesis last time. I used One Punch Man specifically, but My Hero Academia would also work with it. Is that once you get these regulations in place, right? Like you're not going to wind up with just everybody all happy and everybody loves the cops, right? What you're going to wind up with is it's the same superheroes, only now you've got the backing of MSNBC and CNN and billionaires and trillionaires. It's going to be social media. It's going to be corporate management. It's going to be superheroes getting worried about going out and fighting crime that's beneath them because, what if they beat up the wrong guy and they get sued? Or, what if they have paparazzi coming? Or, there's going to be oversight onto everything. And it's just going to be
there are no superheroes beating up people for thought crime and articles saying why we need more superheroes beating people up for thought crime at the same time.
It's going to be an absolute mess. Which is why my perspective was all soups are bastards, defund the superhero regulation groups, but and that would probably be where it would wind up as well. Only now instead of people getting mad at the cops, you get to this boys situation, right? Which again, I know you guys haven't seen it, but are you at least familiar with the conceit?
Kind of like it's superheroes with like really rough personalities. There's like a fascistic Superman type character.
Yeah.
They misbehave and swear. Yeah,
they're like the bad boy superheroes, but they have like a good public persona, but secretly they're all fascists. They all want to murder people, and it's really hard to keep them in line because of course they're superheroes, and it's like Red Sun or something. Superman raised as a communist and he's a monster or something like that. But
okay, so there's a neat thing about that, where when Superman was raised as a communist, it was sort of like he still knew that killing people was wrong. So it was like, man, I sure wish my Uncle Joe didn't kill all those people. Maybe I can institute communism better.
Yeah. But because I mean, One Punch Man did that all the time, and it's really interesting, especially in light of the Stanford incident, because the whole thing that kicks this off is this like Jake Paul, Logan Paul stunt that these kid superheroes want to get big on reality TV and go off and do all this crazy crap, and in One Punch Man, right, you're expected to go off and be a reality TV star and do all this crazy crap and get your social media numbers up, and you gotta get your corporate sponsorships up, and I mean they never did any super unboxing, but I'm sure like in the comic book, but I'm sure there were superheroes doing super unboxing kind of things, just ridiculous crap like that. So I could very easily see a My Hero Academia or a One Punch Man sort of situation arising out of Civil War. before. But of course, Marvel was crap, so it fell on other creators, independent creators, to come in and fill the void, I think. Which, I mean,
you can
ironic.
say that you can say that's a thing in general. Is like a lot of these manga have an individual creator who comes to it with a very clear vision, whereas in Marvel or DC, it's sort of like, well, if we're lucky, we'll get like a little reference to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
if we're lucky,
I'd say, like,
then
ironically enough, that
if we're lucky, the Knopfs will take what we throw at them and actually create something vaguely good.
no, I copyright it. It's copyright me. If you want to do it, you can send me money to take my idea. But I was gonna say, like, ironically enough, I think that's kind of one of the things that would happen in the era of regulation, right? Is that you get these regulation superheroes are crap, and then you need the non-reg superheroes to come in and
free market superheroes. Yeah,
kind of union breaker superheroes, gray market, black market, like superhero speakeasies, right? Like you get these underground superhero speakeasies where people can go and hire actual superheroes to do actual superhero work. Like you're sick of all the social media superheroes and the Jimmy Kimmel superheroes, right? So you have to go to these like fight clubs in the seedy basement of a hotel or something, and then hire these other superheroes or something like that. True communism.
Luke Cage. Well, Luke Cage is the hero for hire. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be an entire world of Luke Cages, basically.
Yeah.
Luke Cages and Punishers doing it for free, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, all the regulations superheroes. So you have to get
they
the black
floated that
done.
idea in one of the what ifs. They talked about the superheroes going underground. It's kind of like in what ifs they float all these ideas for what could have been a more interesting story. Man, that sounds great. Yeah. They should have done that.
One day I'm going to talk about it seems like in a lot of the early what ifs that involve the Avengers, Iron Man ends up dying. Because we have there was
why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Why do you think he dies? Was there a reason for it?
It was just an observation I made, like after I read a couple of the early ones that involve the Avengers. Geez, why does Iron Man die and all these things? I mean, I could be wrong because I haven't read every single what if that exists. But I read What If the Avengers Never Were, which was back in the 70s, and that ends up with Iron Man dying. And then I read What If the Avengers Battled the Gods? Let me see, which ones did I read? And that one ended up with Iron Man dying too. And it was like, did writers in the 70s just have a yen to kill off Iron Man? What's this about?
Well, that proves the guy they're fighting is a real tough guy if they can take out Iron Man or Thor. Yeah.
Yeah, true. And and if you take out Iron Man, that kind of, because the early what ifs were always like, if the alternative happened, it would be worse. That's what it seems like to me. Most of the time, it was the alternative turned out to be something worse. So, killing off Iron Man would definitely emphasize that. Yes, this is a worse scenario than the scenario we got. So, what if Alan Moore wrote Civil War?
Oh no.
Oh no.
I think it would have been more interesting, maybe.
Yeah.
At the very least, it might have been more interesting. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that honestly, I think that Alan Moore would have done a better job. Because as much as I don't like Watchmen and how it ended, I really, really respect the craft of that book.
he's good at constructing. But the only thing I don't like about the only thing I don't like about Watchmen is how he sets up the idea of dropping an alien on New York City. That's the worst part of it. But he at least said, well, if I'm going to drop an alien on New York City, I have to leave all of these hints throughout the book about how I'm going to drop an alien on New York City. Right.
Yeah.
Chekhov's alien drop or something.
And you know, in terms of like how he wrote the individual characters, Moore's Watchmen, the characters who are not the characters that he's actually personally rooting for as the creator are still really well-written characters, and that's why everyone likes Rorschach to this day, right?
Right. Right.
So yeah, I feel like if Alan Moore wrote Civil War, it would probably be even darker, but I think it would also be better crafted.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a big part of me feels like they were trying to imitate Alan Moore in Marvel's Civil War, but we kind of lost the thread.
I think that's probably very accurate. Yeah.
I think that's exactly what they were trying to do. You know, I think Right Geek's quite correct in that it would be darker. For me, I mean, that would have been fine, since again, you know, I'm very sort of 90s anti-hero, Spawn and Punisher kind of guy. Marmaduke might not have enjoyed it though.
Well, there's a great talk I did with like Matt Reese on the Matriarchy, where he brought me on to defend Civil War, and I basically started off by saying, well, I think it kind of sucks, but maybe it'd be an okay alternative universe story. And then the rest of the debate was like Matt Reese explaining to me how I don't hate Civil War nearly enough, right? Yeah, so me as the pro side was, it just sucks a little bit.
Well, it's bad, but it could have been better if it was different.
He should have brought me on, because then I could have done so Civil War was bad, but some of the after effects of it were great. Because I would have been up there. I would have been up there saying, I loved Iron Man Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I love that run so much. Like, and it doesn't exist. I tweeted that actually on Twitter this last night. It would not exist. Right? The whole
and ironically,
run, which I love, would not exist if Civil War didn't happen. So
ironically, it's them putting Tony into a situation where he can just be smart and fight evil bad guys trying to take over the world, right? So it's almost their attempt to try to go back to the old superhero form after Civil War, with him still feeling regret over everything he did. Yeah. It is a good fit for him. That was the only angle I really liked, where, he's a really smart superhero. He's really technologically savvy. He should be involved in the shieldy stuff. Yeah.
Well, I actually really did enjoy Civil War, like unironically. I mean, I don't think it was the best comic that I've read. However, like I got kind of I guess maybe corrupted by Right Geek's recommendations, since I read it in the order that Right Geek suggested. So maybe that's my problem. Maybe I just read it in the right order instead of the proper order. But I didn't think it was that bad, especially.
Yes, I admit it. I was trying to.
Yeah, well, because I mean, I remember when it came out, and I read some of it.
This is my channel.
I'd read some of it when it came out, but it was around the time like I graduated high school and was about to go into the army, like that kind of era. So I didn't have a lot of time for comics. I actually spent a lot more time reading Marvel Zombies than Civil War. But I remember having, an impression that I wasn't.
That's what I haven't read, and I'm actually interested in reading it now, because I did the What If reading. Yeah, I did the What If reading quest for Marvel Insider points, because I'm trying to get 500,000 Marvel Insider points so I can write an Iron Man recommendation list to be published on their website.
Yeah.
I have the secret plan that I want to do a recommendation list of Iron Man comics that are not Armor Wars or Demon in a Bottle, right?
Yeah.
Because I actually have the knowledge to recommend such comics. And like I want to secretly influence whoever's reading the Marvel website to see things my way. So
Everybody has to give Right Geek your digital Marvel Comics codes right now.
Yes, if you got free ones that I can plug in, yeah.
Yeah, I don't, unfortunately. I know Mrs. Punchy has DC comics, whatever thing, login things, but not Marvel, unfortunately. I mean, yes, we did have Marvel. That's how I read all the Civil War stuff, of course. Disavow.
You bought them all at your local comic shop. That's what you did.
that was it. I went down to the local
totally
comic book store. That had closed down because of COVID. I went down there and I got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I read it on Marvel Unlimited, so I guess that counts because I am giving them $10 a month for that.
Yeah, I actually haven't been there in quite a while. Like the local comic book store. I mean, I'd imagine it's shut down. The owner got in trouble for beating up a YouTuber or something.
What? Whoa!
Yeah, it was.
Whoa.
It was one of those like. Well, he was like a big Antifa guy. So I guess he went punch Nazis on one of these. Like right wing. I don't know. I could explain it later if you want. I don't want to get too far into it.
Life is full of strange stories, isn't it?
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, I bought it at the comic book store and I read it there. Well, yeah, I would say Marvel Zombies. I wouldn't give it a strong recommend unless you like the idea of superheroes eating each other's faces off. I mean, well, I know some people don't.
The flavor of it.
Yeah.
Because one of the Marvel Zombies books was on the What If reading quest, so I read it to finish up the reading quest, and I was like, and I got kind of interested in it. I guess because I do want superheroes to eat each other's faces off. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
it's gonna look into it. Yeah.
If that's what you're willing to get into, then it definitely delivers. There's a lot of really sort of gory art and weird creepy stuff going on. It isn't the most intellectually edifying book. I'll say that. But it's not really trying to be, and it's just like a fun little side story. So yeah, Marvel Zombies if you want, but. God, why did I get into Marvel Zombies? There was some point I was going to make about... Oh, yeah, Civil War wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. But the thing was that as I was thinking about why I liked Civil War, like all the things that I liked about Civil War actually turned out to be from casualties of war. Right? Like as I was going back over it in my head, I was like, oh yeah, that was really good. That was really good. That was really... Oh wait, that was casualties of war. That wasn't actually...
they're all from the same book. Yeah, like I was saying. Yeah.
Crap. Yeah, that was in casualties of war too.
It was Christos Gage. The talent behind Dan Slott in the in Dan Slott's recent Iron Man run. There was Christos Gage had to come in and rescue him because he was too much of a lazy putz to actually get crap done, right? Christos Gage, the actual talent behind the throne, is the one that's trying to actually make it make sense, you know?
Yeah, so I'd say tentatively, I did not hate Civil War, and I thought it was okay to decent, but that may just because of the Casualties of War book, right? So I could just be having my perspective skewed by that topic.
And for me, it's that, and then of course Iron Man, Director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and like I said for much of last week, I was going over how Execute Program helped me reconcile with it too. So
yeah, I think Execute Program and Extremists too. I think they added a lot to it because again, knowing Tony's backstory, you know, his struggles with alcoholism and addiction, as well as this weird confidence issue that he has, how he's not got much confidence in himself, but he does have a lot of confidence in his abilities. He's maybe too confident in his abilities and not nearly enough confidence in himself, and how that sort of personality has not only helped him to be a superhero, since it gives him like enough self-doubt that he can check himself and stay moral, as well as enough confidence that he can go out and, you know, kick supervillains in the face or whatever. But then when he's put into this Civil War situation, it also becomes a tragic flaw that undermines him. So his virtue is his flaw, and it leads him to ruin. So I thought all that was really great. It's almost certainly just because of the reading list that Right Geek gave. So I'm not going to say go out and read six or seven.
Yeah, the reading list that I came up with, because the reading list was the reading list I put out was I wanted you to understand what were the things that made me reconcile with it, right?
Yeah. Did you guys get a chance to talk about Happy? Did you guys get a chance to talk about Happy Hogan in the very first podcast you did? Okay, good. Okay.
Briefly, what was your take on Happy?
The one thing I liked about that was it was sort of Happy as a regular guy giving a regular guy perspective, right? So it's almost like if you just read the mainline book, why is Iron Man doing all this evil stuff? Whereas when you hear Iron Man get the regular guy perspective, it's sort of like, oh yeah, he actually has good friends who contribute to him from their down to earth perspective. I guess it's the down to earth perspective for the pro reg side, right? So it's the ordinary Italian boxer type. Yeah.
It's the normie perspective again. Hey, you superhero elites need to pay attention to what the normies are thinking about what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure we got a chance to touch on that, because I really like that subplot. That was I like when they use some of the ordinary, characters from the mythos like that.
And I like those issues really show what you were saying before about Tony being devastatingly depressed over his role in this situation, to the point that he's not even showering,
Yeah, well, he still looked really good. Even though he wasn't showering, he still looked really good. I was kind of upset about that. I was like, if I was going on a bender.
Well, as I pointed out, he looked good. Yeah, he looked good after Happy forced him into the shower, though. That's what I said.
Warzard says, read everything but the main books.
Read everything but the main books. That's actually a pretty good, that's pretty good review of Civil War in general. Yeah, read everything but the main books.
Well, which other ones would you guys say are necessary or great? Because I bought about 130 or so comics at my comic store. The entire run of tie-ins and everything. So I've read some of them.
I would say the Cap. This is me being biased towards Iron Man and Cap, but you've already read pretty much all the Iron Man books. Although you really need to track down Iron Man Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. because that's some good stuff. But the Cap books probably will be very helpful. The Spider-Man books and the Fantastic Four books were the ones that stood out to me when I read it the first time.
Anybody have any experience with Black Panther or Ms. Marvel?
But you're looking for some more Wakanda nationalism? Yeah.
I read that. Yeah.
I haven't read Civil War 2, but I know that Ms. Marvel becomes a key figure in Civil War.
Oh, yeah, actually, that was something else that I was confused about.
Once she's Captain Marvel, she's
maybe Marmaduke can help resolve this, but I was reading through the Civil War books, right?
Yeah.
And it was it was the weirdest thing. Like, I could have sworn that there were female characters and people of color. Like, in every book, almost every page, there were all kinds of superheroes, and they were doing things, and they would, like, they had speaking roles, and they had personalities, and they drove the story forward. It was
you
the
thought none of that
thing.
existed before, too? That's an alternate continuity. Women and people of color didn't exist until 2014.
Well, no, it's not existing until the future though, because I was just the other day reading an article about how diversity is about to come to Marvel Comics, and how that's going to be this big change, and what people are doing to prepare for diverse Marvel Comics. I don't know, has this all been retconned? Have I slipped through to a different universe? What's going on?
We're getting retconned. That's the problem. It's not the Marvel universe getting retconned. It's what's our universe called? Earth 1 or something? Yeah, the devs are retconning our universe.
We're being gaslit.
So are they going to do like?
No, those things that those things that you saw in like the 70s, you imagine them. They were not real comics.
616. 616 is our universe.
Is it okay? 616. Do they have a name? Do they have a name for our universe in 616? Okay, yeah, 616 is the main Marvel universe, but do they have a name for our universe where there are no Marvel superheroes? Because I thought that DC had a name for our universe where there are no DC superheroes, but maybe I'm misremembering.
Warzord says, "Yup."
I don't think so.
All right. I'll just go with Warzord's. I'll just go with Warzord's opinion here. Yeah.
Okay. It's.
Oh, Warzord says, "Yup." Is there in fact a Marvel universe without heroes?
Okay.
What's it? What is its number then? Because we have so many.
That's the question.
Marm.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a lot of different. Well, the two major ones are
1218.
Is that what it is?
The reason I thought that is Gwenpool's supposed to come from our universe into the Marvel universe, and she's read Marvel comics, which suggests to me that our universe exists in the multiverse of Marvel universes, but I don't know if it has a number or not.
Okay, well, I think it may be Earth 1218, and the reason why I was actually looking up on Wikipedia, right? You know, the Sonichu Wikipedia. Because again, I don't know if you've been following like all the deep lore about Chris Chan, but the Dimension Merge stuff. The whole Dimension Merge has a lot to do with these kind of alternate dimensions. Like, he thinks these dimensions are real, and apparently 1218, according to Chris, is the universe we believe in, that we live in, rather, and this was apparently because that's Marvel Universe's canonical answer to what our real world is Earth 1218.
I googled it, and you're right. You're exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. Chris Chan is correct. Thank you, Sonichu, for coming in clutch and showing us the truth.
The destination given to our reality. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's
because
there are a lot of Earths out there.
Yeah, because I mean that's a big thing in the Sonichu lore right now is the merger of C-197 and Earth 1218.
But some of that stuff is the idea guys, right? The idea guys fed Chris that info.
Well, I think they started off by feeding it to him, but then he just kind of ran with it, because that's how Chris does things. You
oh no, we're hijacking the right streams, the right geek stream to talk about Chris Chan. Oh no!
No, we
no.
probably shouldn't, because again, I don't want to get. I don't. Well, I think some of the drama's probably died down now because people are sick of talking about the mom situation.
Yeah. So anyway,
Still,
let's talk about Oedipus Rex instead. Yeah.
horrifyingly relevant works of dystopian fiction. Oedipus Rex.
Oedipus Rex. Our
Uh,
Iron Man, director of Shield, where Iron Man slowly goes insane. Well, actually, that's the story of Haunted is basically Iron Man is insane. Plus, the Mandarin is trying to seed the entire world with Extremis. I mean, that's the actual real plot. But the plot that interests me in that one, why I put that on the list, is Extremis basically drives Tony crazy in that plot. Like, the Extremis actually generates legit hallucinations of dead people that he sees. So,
and spoiler alert,
yeah,
Haunted was part of the homework I wasn't able to get to. So this one might be more like Punchy might have to contribute to this one. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, my comic book store did not stock Haunted. I did find a whole bunch of Haunted comics from like pre-code comics, like about 8 gigabytes worth, which was kind of cool. But
interesting that your local comic book store measures them in gigabytes.
Yeah, 8 gigabytes worth of boxes. That's what they call boxes. But yeah, unfortunately, I actually wasn't able to find Haunted. I was gonna ask if there is is it part of like a collection? Because I could just check my comic book store right now if you want. But
if you look for Iron Man director of Shield.
Okay, so it's part of the director of Shield.
Yeah, my physical collection has a trade, Iron Man Director of Shield, that has all of the Director of Shield stuff.
Okay, yeah, I might be able to find it in there then. Because Haunted on its own, I did find the synopsis, and like websites on it and things. You know, at my comic book store, they had websites at my comic book store, but the actual comic itself eluded me, unfortunately.
Yeah, but the reason I put that on the list is because it was more textual evidence that Extremis has the capacity to drive Tony insane. Because that's essentially what Extremis does in the story.
Gotcha.
So,
I did find like the Hands of Iron story from Iron Man Directors of Shield, where it's more showing him using the power to like to identify, like he can analyze his armor on the molecular level and reprogram it. So it is kind of like putting Tony into more of like a God mode kind of state, you know, especially for someone of his intelligence. He knows how to use that information, right? And it's also like a nice, convenient way of saying, well, that's why he did all that evil stuff. Extremis is driving him insane.
Yeah, but the text is basically saying that. I've got some captures.
Yeah, sure. So throw up the captions. That would be.
I'll throw up some of the captures. Yeah.
From your comic book store.
Yes, from your comic book store.
We have to add that at the end of every sentence just to make sure.
So basically, what's happened is some young heroes that are being trained under the initiative, which is the 50 States Initiative that was talked about in Civil War, ended up getting killed. And this is Tony investigating what's going on behind the scenes of that, because basically the hero that was killed, she was basically folded up into a little ball with gravity powers, essentially, which is a really gruesome way to go. But this hero was investigating a bunch of missing persons. That like there's been a spike in missing person cases, and it turns out that all these missing persons have been kidnapped so that they could be test subjects for this a new version of Extremis that the Mandarin wants to make airborne. So that's like the main story here. but he's talking to Maria Hill about this case, and as he's talking to her about it, this hallucination of Gadget, the hero who was killed, pops up and asks him, "Who's behind the machine, Tony?" And Tony turns around like, "What?" So we have him, hallucinating this dead hero, right?
Right.
And then let's see.
Now, is it only tech-related people he sees visions of, or can he see visions of anybody?
It's Lane, isn't it? It's going to be Serial Experiment Lane.
And he sees visions of anyone that he feels guilty about. So
gotcha.
He had a nightmare, an extremis-generated nightmare about Captain America. Let me find that capture. Yeah, so right here, this is at the beginning of the storyline. This is a nightmare that he has in which Captain America basically confronts him in his living room and gets into a fight with him. I'm just a figment of your imagination. So he has this dream about Captain America. So he sees Captain America. He sees this Gadget character who he also feels guilty for because he's the one running the initiative, right? Eventually, he sees Sal because Sal is dead by this point. And he gets confronted about it. Oh yeah, so here is the guy who Tony suspects is the one who killed Gadget, right? And he confronts her and says, "Cut the crazy-act call. Again, answer me straight in English. Did you kill her?" And the guy says, I understand now. You see them too. What are you talking about? The dead, the ones you failed, right? So he's having these hallucinations of all the dead people that he feels guilty about. And it's basically what's going on is that this is all bubbling up from his subconscious thanks to Extremis. And he's getting clues to this case that he's following involving the Mandarin through these hallucinations because his Extremis brain is processing things that he's not consciously aware of. So all of this unconscious information is bubbling up with all of his personal guilt too, and it's manifesting as these visions, right? And he eventually gets confronted because everyone notices that he's acting weird, right? And he gets confronted about it. What the hell is that about? Because they're noticing he's acting weird. What the hell was that all about? Guys ready for the Bat Factory. Have you noticed? What? Director Stark. He's wearing the armor almost all the time now. So here he's hallucinating Happy, who's giving him another clue, right? Dear God, no, please not Happy Hogan. This isn't real. It can't be real. Of course it isn't, Tony. 1, 2, 3, 4. Counting won't help, buddy. Please listen to me. So this is remember what Graviton said? So these hallucinations are like telling him things that his subconscious has already assimilated, but he's just not aware that he knows it, right? But yeah. It is also like an active psychosis that's going on because of Extremis, right? And I'm trying to get to the part where he gets confronted. Oh yeah. So what do you think, Genius? Think maybe we missed something? And you can see like how rough he's looking there. And he loses his temper. And this is when Maria Hill comes in and says, "Every day it gets worse." Of course, couldn't preview the file. He's coming apart at the seams, right? So then she reports him, because one of the things that is built into superhero registration is if you're starting to go insane, then the government has the right to stop you, basically, right? So she goes to the government and reports that Director Stark is unstable, right? And so that's Maria Hill basically selling him out. And then we have the psychiatrist coming in and confronting him. I thought it would be best to be discreet given the circumstances. Please, Tony, close the door. And then he plays the video of what happened in that confrontation with Graviton. You see them too. What are you talking about? You know, the dead, the ones you failed. So he plays that back for Tony and asks him, how about it? And Tony says, the man's insane. And yet you believe his allegations regarding Paragon? His allegations were supported by the evidence. Between you and me, I think you're correct. Unfortunately, I think Graviton's observation of your current psychological state is correct as well. I reviewed video records of your behavior on the helicarrier. There are moments during which you fall into brief dissociative fugue states. It's as if you're reacting to, wanting to, things only you can see. Are you suggesting that I'm hallucinating? Well, yes, because you are. Yeah. So basically what happens is the government says, okay, are you? And he denies it. No, I'm not. That's good. I hate to think that the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. is suffering from incipient schizophrenia. Would you mind doing me a favor, Tony? Could you remove your helmet? Why? Please, just humor me. There, happy? And you see he looks so rough there too. Oh, Tony, what are you doing to yourself, man? How long have you been locked up in that tin can? Not long, a week maybe. So he's been in this armor for a solid week. Who are you trying to protect yourself from? So, and basically so here is him hallucinating Sal too. So he hallucinates all these dead people that he feels guilty about, right? And the other people in S.H.I.E.L.D. start to notice, so they report him to the government, and he ends up getting an anklet that basically restricts him from using his extremis powers, which turns out to be a terribly inconvenient thing when he has to fight the Mandarin.
Right.
And what he ends up doing at the end of the story, which literally made me scream the first time I read it. What he ends up doing is he ends up cutting off his own foot so he can remove the anklet and access his extremis powers. Like, so here he is, actively hallucinating. The extremis is making him arguably psychotic, and in this state that he's in, he decides it's a good idea to cut off his own foot so that he can access his extremis powers. And I mean, actually, it is a good idea technically because he was able to stop the Mandarin that way. And yeah, the foot did grow back because of extremis, but still, like, choosing the most painful way to solve the problem.
It's interesting. Okay, you might have a thought on this, right, Geek? But you've mentioned before how early Iron Man comics play up the fact that Tony Stark essentially has a physical disability. And it's almost like they're trying to make the suggestion that beyond his alcoholism, he also may have mental disabilities. I mean, there's a fantasy explanation for it. I don't know. Do you think that's a deliberate thing or just a coincidental thing?
That he has emotional problems in addition to the alcoholism?
Right. And do you think maybe they're playing up mental disability as a theme for Tony?
I think they were kind of forced into it as a way to explain why he would choose to drown his own sorrows in alcohol. I think that the mental illness aspect of it is kind of necessary in order to make the alcoholism make sense.
Gotcha. Because let's see. Okay, so it was I was thinking of Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner is the one who had an abusive dad and had the anger issues.
Yeah.
How much through Tony's history has like Howard Stark, like is Howard? I got the impression from the movies that Howard Stark is sort of one of these like, you know, tough, demanding fathers, like high energy genius dad, high energy genius son. Does that ever play into Tony's alcoholism or his maybe mental problems at all? His relationship with his father?
It's interesting that you should ask, because the movies actually way downplays it. In the comics, Howard is an absolute bastard. In the comics, Howard is arguably an abusive dad as well. And there's an issue that was released in the late 80s. And it's basically Tony in an AA meeting. And I believe he reveals this in this issue, or it might be an earlier issue, but in an issue in the late 80s, it was revealed that his dad was an alcoholic too, and his dad was the one who introduced him to alcohol when he was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And you know, there's other textual information that like his dad, like his first girlfriend when he was 17 years old was the daughter of a rival of Howard Stark, and Howard Stark forced Tony to break off of from that relationship for that reason. And then you also have, you know, textual evidence that Howard Stark was always going after Tony for being too sensitive, for being a pansy. You should have more iron in your backbone because Stark men are made of iron. That kind of stuff.
Foreshadowing. Yeah.
So the foreshadowing. So yeah, the movies does the whole father issues thing with a very light touch compared to the comics. The movies really downplays it. The comics, it's definitely an abusive relationship.
That fits the pit. It's also interesting that Captain America had an alcoholic. There's a real problem with fatherhood for a lot of characters. Yeah. I guess Spider-Man's more defined by the fact that his Uncle Ben becomes his surrogate father figure, and he feels like he let him down. Yeah, every good superhero needs to have a tragic element in their past.
Yeah.
Well, okay, this may be one of those galaxy brain takes, but bear with me for a minute. What if Marvel Civil War is that for the entire Marvel universe? Maybe they plan that as a way, because, you know, every superhero needs to let down somebody, right? Needs a tragic past where they let down people. So maybe they decided that they would just have one comic book where every superhero could let down everybody who reads it, and then from then
including
on,
the people in our world.
Yeah, including all the people in our world, right? And then from then on, all the superheroes have this built-in, brilliant plot device. Could that be it? Could that possibly be what's going on?
I would believe that if after the Civil War there was any effort to actually have them have the heroes redeem themselves in our eyes. But I don't think that effort has actually happened. I think they've doubled down on the bad lessons of Civil War. And that's why they had a Civil War too, right? So,
yeah, I haven't read any of Civil War 2. Is it like a retcon, or is it just a continuation, or what happens in it?
I think I said last week that Civil War 2 is basically Minority Report. Now we're going to lock people up for pre-crime.
Oh yeah. That's really
at this
weird.
time.
I can't imagine.
Miss Marvel, and this time Miss Marvel, who is now Captain Marvel, is on the pro locking people up for pre-crime, and Tony is anti, because even though he got his brain wiped, apparently he learned something from the first Civil War. So,
maybe that's why they've been pushing Captain Marvel so much, because she made the right career move by supporting the Red guys.
Yeah, everyone who takes the deep state position becomes the next flagship Marvel hero.
Yeah, you bend the
next one,
knee and you get rewarded. Bend the knee, get rewards. That's how the Illuminati works. So.
And then they get rewarded. Except, people say, people who I don't think have read a lot of the Iron Man focused supplementary material get a little careless, I think, and say that, Tony Stark was the unquestioned villain of this event, and he ended up benefiting from it. But if you read Iron Man Director of S.H.I.E.L.D., that is not the impression that you get. or Iron Man's tie-ins, Iron Man 13 and 14, or anything else where any of the other side books in which Iron Man is a featured character. You don't get the impression that he's benefiting from that. Quite the opposite, in fact. He's basically lost all of his friends. He's going crazy. Like, the Extremis is driving him crazy. He's basically depressed and psychotic, and so there's no benefit that's being accrued here. And by the way, he was forced into the position as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. They basically blackmailed him into it. I think we went over that last week. So
there doesn't really seem to be any benefit from my perspective either. Like, reading through it, there was one part right at the end of like Civil War 7, right, where he's the flag wavy scene where he's like, oh yeah, the future's going to be great kind of thing for like 2 pages or something. It's kind of optimistic, but it doesn't actually show him benefiting. This is after all his friends are in prison on the moon, and New York City's been blown off the smithereens. So I don't know how people would have that take. Maybe you could get somebody who does have that take on, and we could do the ringer, but I'd agree with that.
Well, I think a lot there is a difference between how Tony presents himself to other people when he's in the public eye versus what's going on in his own private life. So, the book Civil War: The Confession actually shows that quite clearly, because you have in the second half of the book when he's putting Cap in his cell, and they have that confrontation with Cap in his cell, and in that scene, he's all bravado and, well, you're a sore loser, Captain America. But the first story shows you what he really thinks privately, right? So I think that the ones with that opinion that I'm discussing, they have the case for it because they're looking at how he is behaving when he's in public. And when he's in public, he has to put on that brave face and be the confident. Yeah, that put the swagger and be the confident face of registration. But they're confusing that for what he actually thinks instead of looking at what's going on in his private life. In truth, he's completely torn up about it, and it's not something that he's benefiting from at all.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, we'd have to actually get somebody with that perspective to get So what you really say is
we need a soy jack.
Yeah, but
why can't you just obey the government? The science says that superheroes will continue blowing up people until we do something about it.
One thing I was wondering, with the Extremis in particular, because I know that Extremis has different effects on different people. Is this madness thing endemic to Extremis, or is that just something that happened to Tony because he's Tony? Like, would everybody injected with Extremis go mad and hallucinate?
Both I did show you materials from Execute Program last week in which the government officials are discussing what happened to the animal trials when the Extremis was being developed and how they all became like aggressive and paranoid because of the effects of Extremis. So there's a little bit of the yes, it's Extremis, but it's also a little bit of Tony too. Because I believe I argued last week that
it's the cocaine situation,
a lot of those flaws. that was, yeah, a lot of those flaws that we're seeing in Tony in the Civil War period are things that do exist in a proto form in the early canon. But I said last week that Extremis just dials them up to 11. So the control freak nature, the control freak nature, the trust issues, all of those things that they do exist in early canon in kind of a weaker form, and Extremis just dials them up to their most extreme, essentially. So it's partly this is how it's going to manifest in Tony as an individual human being, but it's also partly that Extremis does do that to all the subjects that have been subjected to it.
Yeah, it's the Bill Cosby situation, right? I mean, it's specifically with the cocaine joke, not with the You know what? Never mind. That was probably a bad one. Never mind. Well, because there's an old Bill Cosby stand-up routine about drugs and cocaine. I've been trying to find it on YouTube, but I can't because he's been cancelled, I guess. But basically, he's saying like, oh, well, cocaine is great because it intensifies your personality. Yes, but what if you're an a-hole, right? Like it magnifies your personality, but it also magnifies the bad aspects of your personality. So it's basically like that would be extremist. But does Tony? I mean, I suppose he is prone to being haunted by ghosts from his past, isn't he?
Yeah.
Actually,
guilt is
guilt oriented.
Guilt is his central. Yeah, guilt is his central aspect. He's in the early comics, you see him all the time. If somebody dies anywhere in his vicinity that is associated with him, it's always, it's my fault, even if he really didn't have anything to do with it, you know. Every time like Happy and Pepper are put in danger in those early comics, it's like, it's my fault because they're associated with me, right? I think that character is kind of built around survivor's guilt, even because the only reason that he escaped in his origin story is that somebody else died for him, right? So like his original wound is somebody else died for him, and now he carries that guilt and has to find some way to make up for it. Still there?
Sorry, I think my internet just blinked out for a second. I can hear you.
Yeah, we've been getting some issues on my end, but I can still hear you. So,
and my phone is going off with some sort of weather warning on my end. It's just it's just flash flood tornado.
Oh God, not again! Is this going to happen like every week? Like
Somebody's got a weather thing.
Yeah.
Weather attack.
Maybe we should do some.
Right,
we should do some X-Men, some Storm next or something. Go into.
Get your marriage with T'Challa, yeah.
Yeah, she got married during Civil War, didn't she, or something like that? Because I was rather shocked by that. I was like, oh my God.
Probably prior. Yeah, a little bit
prior.
I think. Yeah. But basically in that same era, yeah. So.
All right. Well, good for them. You know, having their ethno state babies in their Waldorf kingdom, which of course I disavow, but completely disavow.
You don't have to disavow it if they're communists. Then it's okay.
Oh yeah. Well, that was actually something I was talking to an old teacher of mine about, like after the movies had come out, because a lot of people had been obsessing over the movies, and I remember going to see it, and it was good, but I was kind of shocked that everybody was really on board, like the same people who would have been horrified if it was like a South African Boer or something, were really on board with it. But yeah, I mean,
Well, that assumes normies can understand stories beyond thing go boom.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I thought it was fine. So who else was involved in Civil War? So we did Spider-Man, right?
Yeah, we covered him.
We covered Iron Man. I think have we discussed Iron Man at all?
Yeah.
I think Right Geek briefly mentioned him. Captain America, Wolverine. We kind of touched a little bit on X-Men. Right?
Oh, we lost Right Geek, but we're still alive. That's odd. Okay.
Oh,
well, hopefully
not?
she can join us again. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, we can carry on. Yeah.
Well, are we? We're still live, even though it's a channel.
That's what it says. Yeah. And what I'm assuming is, as long as she doesn't log in and end it, it would keep going, right? So I think she actually has to log in and end the stream herself.
20-hour stream. You cannot stop us.
Okay. The very first time I streamed, this happened to me, and then the guy actually my guest took the opportunity to just make fun of how stupid my username was while I was disappeared from the internet. It was great.
That's pretty great. Yeah, you can't stop him. Let's see. Yes, still going. Okay, thank you, Warzord. I was just about to ask if Warzord or anyone else who's watching could chime in, but yeah, we are still good. So, so Wolverine, One Punch Man. Obviously, we kind of touched on that, the One Punch Man connections. Did you ever actually wind up reading that?
I've never read One Punch Man yet. It's on my short list of ones to read.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw that tweet. Okay, I saw that tweet where this person said my 9-year-old loves One Punch Man, but he's never been allowed to see it. So I said, well, then how do you write stories about it? And the 9-year-old says, well, I just make up what I think the show is about. I just thought that's the coolest little kid thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's kind of what I used to do as a little kid too. Because I didn't have access to comic books all that often. Mostly at the barber shop that we used to go to, right? There was this barber shop at on the ground floor of the building we were living in. So we go down and meet Bob the barber, every week or two, and he always had these big piles of like Fantastic Four comics and Spider-Man comics and things. So every once in a while I'd be able to read them, but my dad was more into like having me read C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien things, right?
Yeah, grow your brain, yeah.
Yeah, kind of you want to be a scholar athlete, blah 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 blah, kind of thing. So I'd just kind of go off and make up, stories for the superheroes I liked. And I think it was around that age too, so that's a good age to do it. Isn't the superhero registration thing overdone at this point?
I feel like Marvel did it into the ground. I mean, Incredibles did it before Marvel did it, and that was more like it was just a premise to set up the Incredibles as characters, right? Whereas in Civil War, that's more like everything is about the Registration Act and debating the Registration Act amongst each other.
Yeah, I'd probably say the same thing. I mean, it works in the sense of like a My Hero Academia or One Punch Man or Incredibles, because it's not the story isn't about superhero registration. That's just part of the world building, right? So yeah, I think I would say it's probably overdone, but if it's just part of the world building, I'm able to overlook it. Like it's an okay premise. It's fine.
I'm okay if there's some creative interpretation of the superhero premise, right? Which is something, it sounds like One Punch Man is doing that. I know My Hero does it, where if you're going to distinguish, I hate it when superheroes just feel like, oh, it's brand X Marvel or it's brand X Batman. If an indie person's going to write a superhero at this point and the market is so glutted with superheroes, I think you kind of owe it to have like some kind of interesting setup like that, where it's superheroes, but the twisteroo is blah 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 blah. Like in this world they are all super capitalist, or it's superheroes, but in this world they're all super communist. Something like that.
Yeah, they're all basically One Punch Man is they're all super J-pop idols, I guess. Like I don't know if you know anything about like the Japanese idol industry or the celebrity industry.
I know there's like a big connection between it and like the anime industry. Like that's a really good way of you building your music brand is to like have your song played on Naruto or something, right?
Yeah,
and I know there are K-pop stands on Twitter. I know about those guys.
Yeah, it's very much like that. It's basically like Marvel post-reg, but it's Japan in the anime industry kind of thing. But even that, like the registration superheroes, some of them are interesting, but the main draw is of course Saitama, who's not registered in the beginning, and I don't know. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but it's interesting on its own, apart from the registration angle, right? Registration is just part of the world building, and it's very cynical about the benefits of registration as well.
Yeah,
and it is actually interesting because it's quite critical of capitalism at times, but he also comes right out and has like a ridiculous comic villain who's a communist that has a really thick skull, so thick that he can get a sword shoved in it without dying, kind of thing. So he does take the Mickey out of commies as well. So it's
nice.
You don't have to worry going into it. Like it's a non-woke.
Right, and I feel like Japanese creators play a little bit more with political concepts, whereas Western comics, I don't know, they feel like they have to treat the theme. They think of politics as a theme, and Japanese creators might think of politics as a I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm trying to talk about like the subtle differences in tone when comics have politics presence as part of the plot. Maybe thinking of My Hero Academia again, it's sort of like the libertarian aspect of My Hero Academia is more of a setup to make the superhero world feel interesting and different from Western comics. Whereas in Marvel, it feels like they're deliberately trying to evoke, the Patriot Act and American post 9/11 politics, try to say something about American post 9/11 culture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, especially in like Civil War. Right, like the message is incredibly heavy-handed. It's like, this is our politics. This is politics. This is political. Hey, look, this is political. Did you get that this was political? This is
you're super relevant.
Issue.
Yeah.
It's we're very topical and we're very now and we're very current and this is political. And it's just like, oh my god, all right, it's very on the nose. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like I can enjoy, very sort of politically motivated, poignant things and such, but sometimes you do just kind of want to kick back and get to somebody that's a bit more radically center, I guess, rather than just beating you over the nose with hey, Patriot Act is bad, until Biden becomes president, in which case we stop talking about the Patriot Act entirely because he was the one that wrote the Patriot Act.
You've seen the great old comic where Captain America protects a bunch of neo-Nazis, right?
Yeah, well, I've heard about it. I haven't read it, but I've heard about it.
I dig it. I want to own the comic book because it's just sort of like, yes, I knew Captain America wasn't woke. I was right. I went on the internet and Googled to see if I was right, and I was right.
Well, I mean, that was clearly when he was a Hydra agent, so, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Do you know what issue it was, or?
I bet Google will provide the answer to that. I feel like it was the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, because that was back when the ACLU was defending neo-Nazis, and when you could be on the left and support the ACLU defending neo-Nazis. So that could have been
right. The world is just full of weird scenarios of one group of people being 180 degrees opposite of what they are a few years later. Okay, I found the meme, but I'm trying if I can find anyone saying, "Oh, it's from." Come on, I need some insufferable nerd on the internet to tell me what this meme is from. Okay. I can't. I don't have. It comes right up if you Google Captain America free speech. Boom, there it is.
Yeah. 275 from 1982, where he defends a
You did it!
spokesman for being attacked by protesters. Yeah.
Nice Google powers there.
So, Volume
Well,
1,
boy,
270. Boom. Oh, and of course, like the first image is Alex Jones looking sad. That's not political. Okay.
I wonder if Alex Jones has ever been referenced or paid homage to in Marvel Comics.
Oh, God, I'm sure he has at some point. I mean, I know I've seen him in like comic books and anime before. I can't say offhand which ones, but I've seen stand.
I know they made fun of Pat Robertson in the like Marvel Civil War Spider-Man issue. Like, there's a guy who's clearly supposed to be Pat Robertson talk about how this is because of the gays. That's why 9/11 happened.
I mean, you never know.
I've been trying to reach Right Geek, and my internet's super slow, so I'm trying to see if she is desperately trying to get back on, or if she's like, if we've lost her forever.
Was it the weather? Yeah, I've sent her a message, but
yeah, you okay? All right, maybe we just lost her. Maybe she just lost her internet forever. All right. Well, do you want to have a closing thought on Marvel Civil War, Punchy?
All right. I mean, do you want to just wrap it up then and leave, or do you want to kick around a little bit longer, see if Right Geek?
We can kick around. Yeah, I like kicking around.
Okay,
give Right Geek some free content. Yeah, increase. Everybody subscribe to the Right Geek. Say things to the Right Geek while she's not here. Yeah. So watch all her videos
and subscribe
through the end. Yeah.
Hit the like button.
Do it for Right Geek.
Okay, and coming up next, we're gonna have some Minecraft Let's Plays and some fidget spinner unboxing videos, and
we gotta do meme reviews and try not to laugh compilations.
Oh yeah, try not to laugh. That's pretty big, isn't it?
Try not to laugh as Marvel screws over Tony Stark yet again. Try not to cry.
Like do a dramatic reading of Civil War and try not to laugh at it as it's going along. Well, I mean that would probably be try not to cry, I guess. But yeah, get it right, Geek, no prize. All right. Well, which other superheroes from Civil War did you wish to discuss, Marmaduke?
Maybe just real quick about Wolverine. So there was like this subplot where the mutants didn't want to get involved because they're like generally just suspicious of the government, right? So I really like the scene of like Wolverine trying to cope with Captain America's death, having to like sneak aboard Shield just to confirm it, and then having to bring the bad news to everybody. And there's a great sequence in Death of Captain America where Wolverine is telling Spider-Man, Captain America told us all that you had the stuff of heroes in you, and who are we to disagree? And there was this line Spider-Man had back where he's like, oh, what are you just like a complete bullshitter? Like, you joined the Avengers after I did. And I was really interested in that scene. I wanted to know, was Wolverine just completely bullshitting Spider-Man, or was he sort of like telling a partial truth, right? Like maybe Captain America did say something like that to Wolverine at some point, right? I don't know. It was sort of like, great, a real cool hero build-up moment where Captain America is like inspiring the next generation, but maybe bullshit. So I don't know. That would be a bit more of a comic nerd question where they'd have to know like what that would be possible referencing though.
Yeah.
Any other characters that stood out to you?
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that either. I mean, it could have been, but again, I thought the hippie guy was an original 1960s Iron Man dude. So, actually, well, it's saying here that Blade was involved in Civil War. Blade of all people. I had no idea that was the case. I actually haven't read this yet. Did you know that Blade was? He's fighting Wolverine.
I have never read a Blade comic. All I know Blade from is the R-rated action movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean those I think that's how everybody knows Blade, really.
That was before the Marvel Cinematic Universe really took off. Like Blade and X-Men were sort of like the proto, like good superhero movies before superhero movies were like the standard. Every single summer, a new superhero movie. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, well, Batman was also very popular. Back in the
yeah.
90s. They had Batman, and then Blade kind of came out as like the edgier version of the Batman movies. And not a lot of people read the Blade comics, I don't think. It was mostly the movies, but yeah, apparently he is still around, and he's involved with shit. Is he pro reg? Oh god,
Ooh.
he's stabbing Wolverine. Oh god. Okay, yeah, I'll have to check this out. Does anyone in chat happen to know? Blade was from Tomb of Dracula, not really mainstream. Yeah,
Not really
definitely,
mainstream. Yeah.
definitely not mainstream. Like there were a few people of color superheroes that were sort of mainstream back in the 90s. Like obviously Spawn was the big one, but Blade was just kind of he was very niche. He was kind of maybe like Vampirella level or something. Maybe lower than that.
It's also interesting how like Guardians of the Galaxy were minor characters. I think Big Hero 6 is based on some really obscure Marvel comics, but Marvel has definitely served its job of being like an idea farm for Disney. Like Disney's just going to farm every obscure Marvel character they can for the next 100 years and never allow any of them to go into the public domain.
Yeah. Well, do you know what about Thor? Like, are they able to hold rights to Thor even though he's an actual god? Like, how does that work?
As I understand it, Disney's trying to make that argument. So I guess the question is, even if you were completely in the right legally, would you want to fight Disney and have Disney make your life hell? Like, I know I've seen people do like comics based on the mythological, like the original version of Thor. So my guess is probably nail you if you did anything that looked too much like the Marvel version of Thor, right? Like maybe the Marvel version has enough distinctive elements that you can't copy any of that stuff. But you know, like old Thor's supposed to be like a groupie, ugly redhead, you know, hitting things with his hammer. He's not quite as noble and beautiful as Marvel Thor.
Yeah, I mean the Marvel Thor. Like I don't want to badmouth Thor because he's a fine character. I don't hate him, except when he's a robot. Then he's kind of a d-bag.
He's New World Order. Yeah.
Yeah, I was never like super into that way that they depicted Thor. Like I liked the because I grew up with like Bullfinch's mythology kind of stuff. So I was a nerd from way back. So I liked, you know, that gritty kind of violent Thor that walked around. He got drunk and ate his own goats and dressed up like women to kill trolls at their own wedding, kind of thing. You know, that was my kind of. Those are the kind of Thor stories I like.
I think Neil Gaiman might have done his take on mythological Thor, and even like the art is very like abstract and feels ancient. So I mean, if you've read the original myth, I want to go read the original myth because I just got interested in it because of that. It was like a free comic book day comic or something. That I do feel like you know, if people get sick of, I don't know, like deconstruction of heroes, I mean, there's a lot of public domain myth and you can use it without getting sued. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've always thought that these, you know, old mythical characters were the original superheroes, and I know that's not like a controversial take nowadays, but you know, in a very real sense, right? Like people, tend to look back on like King Arthur and Thor as being, you know, like fine literature or something from way back in the day, but I think really at that time they were just like serialized Batman stories. You know, Iron Man stories or something. Like it was nice fun for kids and man-children, you know, man-child peasants who like to come back from the fields and just kick back with a glass of mead and listen to their stories about Thor beating people's brains open, that kind of thing. So,
well, yeah, and I see that element a lot in the arts, where like at their most fun, the arts communicate to everybody on the bell curve, right?
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with that take. Yeah, on these types of characters. Yeah.
Actually, one thing, I will give a plug for a different channel, not just Bright Geek's channel, but it's not very well known. It's Jackson Crawford, I believe. Jackson
That's
Crawford.
kind of material.
For like Thor and that kind of mythology. He's actually one of the world's leading scholars on Old Norse language. Right, like he's a published author. He's an academic. He's a teacher. He actually he's worked as the consultant on Frozen. All the Frozen movies, I guess they had like Norse ruins in it because it took place in Scandinavia or something. I didn't really watch Frozen. Somebody out there probably did. But yeah, he's the guy responsible for all that stuff. Assassin's Creed, all kinds of like pop culture things he's been called up on, and he's also got a YouTube channel with like 10 views
because every world expert has to get a YouTube channel with 10 views. That's great. Yeah, what a great really recommendation. Wow.
Really obscure YouTube channel, but it's great. He does readings, he does videos on Thor and Odin and all those kind of weird old gods. So I mean, like any superhero, there isn't like one canon story about Thor. There's like a whole bunch of different versions and different writers and things. But if you're interested in checking any of that stuff out, I'd say Jackson Crawford is a nice place to start. He's probably the most reliable one. I'll say that on YouTube. Otherwise, you'll wind up watching like a Varg video where Varg is saying that Thor is the god of gravity because he discovered the theory of relativity because he was the god of gravity and his belt was the Milky Way or something like that. It's bizarre stuff.
Head canons about Thor, Norse mythology.
Yeah, that most people, if you just YouTube up Thor and try and find experts on Thor, almost all of it is headcanons from crazy people. No offense to Varg, but he is kind of a nutter. But yeah, Jackson Crawford is a good, reliable academic source for starting out on that. If you're interested, or anyone in the audience, interested.
I want to get into. I've done like a few like Japanese floor audiobooks. Right, like I want to get into some of that stuff again because it always surprised me how I'll like find like these are the fairy tales of Sweden and like no one's ever made an audiobook out of them. It's like, oh wow, the internet's full of all this like cool treasure from different cultures that people are barely aware of.
Yeah, go for it. I actually found one of my favorite channels too. Oh God, I forget his name offhand. But he's this gentleman from Kenya who did an audio book on a couple different things. I think one of them was The Road to Serfdom, and the other one was like the Constitution of No Authority or something like that. Like a bunch of weird libertarian anarchist stuff.
Yeah.
And just read the books online. And has this fun little channel. So yeah, if you ever want to do any more of those dramatic readings,
anarcho-libertarianism, yeah, Ayn Rand versus Rothbard, yeah,
or just anything, it doesn't have to be specifically that, but it could be like again the Japanese fairy tale kind of things. Those are always fun. Oh God, yeah, and speaking of too, there's another guy that I like, plugging some more channels. Oh God, what was his name? He's the one that does like little cartoons of like stick figure people and these prostitutes. And
oversimplified
and things.
Oversimplified?
No. Hang on, I gotta forget what his name is, but I'll see if I can pull it up. You might have already seen him because I think he's done some of the books that you've discussed as well. Lynn for me, that's it. Okay. He's fun for that. Yokai explain. Oh, actually, he just uploaded one like an hour ago. He does get a lot of views though because he does like anime.
Good hustle,
videos. Yeah. But 300,000 subscribers or thereabouts. So a little bit. That's good.
All right. Yeah, I got up my YouTube game. Okay, the weird thing that happened to me is I just made some goofy Sonic memes, and they're doing I think one of them just became my most viewed videos. Like that's what I love about YouTube is I never know what the heck is. Yeah, I never know what's gonna work. This seems like a fun thing to do. I wonder if 10 people will watch this. Oh, okay. Huh.
Yeah, well, that's.
And I start rubbing my hands together evilly.
Have you ever seen Lindy Beige? Are you familiar with him?
No.
No. Oh God, he's great. He's by far my favorite YouTube channel. Besides #1 Marmaduke fan and Rikes. He's the third favorite YouTube channel. But he's one
so
of these
nice
like
of you.
he's one of these sword guy, historical European martial arts kind of guys. But he does a lot of history rants and science videos and all kinds of things. Lindy Hop, how to do Lindy Hop dances. But he did a video once on how he became a popular YouTuber, right?
Huh.
And he gives advice to all aspiring YouTubers on how to get really popular. And it's basically just put out videos and wait. Like you can't predict it. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Does he talk about quantity versus quality at all, or is that it? Is that how simple it is for him?
No, it's basically just you put out videos and you wait, and then maybe one day some old video blows up, and then you're famous. And that's basically it. That's his insight, and it's great. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that works.
Like I feel like I came to a similar conclusion from another end. Like my rule for YouTube is I have to have fun making it, or else it's going to become just like another weight cut. That's what stops YouTube from being a weight truck jog is I have to have fun doing it. Yeah, and then anything I get is a nice surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, Lindy's very much the same. He's just like maybe you get big and then it's a nice surprise, and you just you put out videos. Dying Alive is that other one. He's the one that was doing all the videos on like the weird, obscure libertarian anarchist stuff. He's great fun. He only gets like 3 or 4 views, sadly enough, on his channel. So I would also recommend checking out him if you can.
Speaking of weird libertarian anarchist stuff, have you ever read the whole Once and Future King series?
Well, I've read the Once and Future King, the book The Once and Future King. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, T.H. White. So like the 20th century. Yeah, because I thought of you because there's like a whole discussion of anarchism at the end of the last book. I thought, this is highly unexpected in a King Arthur book.
Huh. Yeah, because to be totally honest, like I loved those books when I was a kid. I mean, I read a lot of fantasy books. It was basically C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, Lloyd Alexander, T.H. White, whoever did those Silver on the Tree books, like a whole bunch of different ones. I don't remember anything about anarchism in Once and Future King or in probably Candle in the Wind was the last one or something, or Ill Made Night.
Yeah, it's right at the end. Yeah, it's the one where King Arthur is a grown man. Merlin meets him one last time to like turn him into an animal again before he has to go out and face Mordred, right? And so it's like King Arthur has to go on this whole existential journey to figure out if he's a failure or not, or if he accomplished anything. And it's like it's one of the strangest fantasy books I ever read. Where like I was really struck by the first books. It was sort of like it went from Harry Potter to really strange existential thought at the end. So I'm still kind of processing those books. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and reread it because I haven't read those books since I was like maybe 10. And I don't remember anything specifically about anarchism, but it's quite possible that I read that and that screwed me up for life. So you never know. I'd have to go back and check those out.
All right, so we got some nice YouTube recommendations and some nice book recommendations. Coolio. Well, everybody, I will probably repost this on my channel, so I'll say again, everybody subscribe to The Right Geek for more Iron Man and other interesting dystopian commentary. One day we can talk Punchy Sonichu into having a channel, so we can chat up his channel. But Punchy, thanks for being a guest and for all the
I guess one of these days.
And we resisted the temptation to hijack The Right Geeks stream and turn it into a giant Chris Chan lore discussion. So maybe another time.
Let's talk all about Chris Chan lore.
We should convince her to do it as a dystopia. We should talk about Quickville as a dystopia and actually get her caught up on Chris Chan.
It really is a dystopia. It's definitely a dystopia. And it's a dystopia that's playing itself out in real time, in real life as well. And that's the horrible thing about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you could convince her, I'd be game for that. The only problem, again, it would be topical and it might get more views, but it might get the wrong kind of views. Would be
right, like weird YouTube. I guess you and I somehow are part of weird YouTube, and The Right Geek's just the innocent one that we're trying to induct into our Christian cult.
Yeah, I heard like Blair White was doing videos on Chris Chan now, and
you know what drove me nuts? Okay, what drove me nuts is Philip DeFranco did a whole video on Chris Chan, and he clearly thought that Chan was Chris's last name. Mr. Chan. Chan got arrested. That jerk. He's just pretending to be a Chris Chan fan.
Okay, yeah, there was a whole thread on that on Kiwi Farms, I think, of people getting mad at somebody for thinking that Chris Chan's actual name was Chris Chan. But yeah, that I think it was him.
YouTube was a mistake. All right. Well, I had
okay. We should get going. So, how do we stop the stream now that
I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can. I think Right Geek has to stop it. I hope she stops it before it becomes a 12-hour stream, or YouTube might not save it, or who knows. Yeah, I better just message her again and let her know. I don't think the stream will end.
Yeah, I'm just gonna send her. Oh, yes, my sat went down. I assume. No. I think you need to. Question mark. We'll see if we can get Right Geek back to. Because I mean, we could leave, but the stream's still going to be playing. I think.
Right. So. Black. It's a John Cage conceptual YouTube stream. It represents the emptiness of our souls. In
4 hours 33 minutes. The audio is is whatever audio is going on in the background of your house, right? And the visual is whatever happens to be on your phone screen as you're watching, and it's art. Art.
I found some contemporary people who know that meme, so they'll do like a Sega Genesis chiptune cover of John Cage's 1433. It's just silent Sega Genesis, or
oh god, that's great. Oh man, I can't believe I didn't think of that first. That's great. No, I call dibs on Nightcore. Nightcore 433.
Yeah, it's got to have like an anime John Cage, right?
Yeah.
Lo-fi John Cage beats to chill / study.
Let's see. Is there any like famous anime piano player?
Oh, not. Okay, I know that Soul plays the piano in Soul Eater. I can't think of any anime that's specifically about a pianist, but Soul Evans is the first pianist that comes to mind in anime.
All right. Oh, hey. Well, there's some anime girls playing piano. That might be an.
Well, you can find anime girl. Now draw her playing the piano. Now draw her studying to get her education. Yeah. All right. Well, we've alerted Right Geek to the problem. I think we're kind of powerless to do anything else on our end. So thanks everybody for joining.
All right.
What's it?
Yep.
May your Iries receive you at the journey's end.
Yeah, and have children. Don't forget. Just have.
Yeah. Don't have dreams. Have children.
Yes.
All right. Love you guys. Catch you later.
Bye.